Hey guys, tonight we're easing into the hush of silk screens, the muted clink of teacups cooling beside lacquered beds, and the surprising weight of a ceramic object resting under your neck. Welcome to Qing Dynasty China, where bedtime wasn't just about comfort. It was a ceremony, a declaration, a tiny silent performance of status, values and personal hygiene. And your pillow was the star of the show. The moment you lie down, the shock hits you, not from ghost stories or Confucian guilt, but from the fact that your pillow isn't soft. It's not even remotely yielding. You're staring at what looks like a brick shaped by a potter, with strong opinions and even stronger wrists. It's cold, glazed and alarmingly rectangular, not a feather in sight, and yes, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. I love seeing which corner of the world you're drifting off in. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're lying on a lacquered platform bed, no mattress, just a neatly woven mat. And your pillow is what you'd call challenging. It's made of porcelain, painted in elegant blue and white designs that depict lotus blossoms, swans, or perhaps a wise old man with a beard so long it deserves its own zip code. You don't know whether to rest on it or admire it from a distance. Spoiler, both will be equally uncomfortable. The Qing Dynasty didn't believe in neck support, or softness, or spinal kindness. What they did believe in, though, was formality, symbolism, and the idea that your sleep posture revealed your soul. That's not an exaggeration. The way you lay your head, how high, how flat, even how your chin tilted, could suggest your place in society, your gender role, your moral discipline, and possibly how many dragons you were dreaming of on any given Tuesday. The porcelain pillow is cool to the touch, which would be a plus if it weren't also shaped like something that escaped from a furniture showroom and landed on your neck. You try to reposition, it doesn't help. A mild panic sets in. Is this what I'm stuck with? And the answer, historically, is yes. For elite Qing families, pillows weren't meant to be cozy. They were sculptural objects, practical tools, and miniature moral lessons. Some even came with inscriptions, a neat little bedtime reminder to be humble, filial, or modest in your thoughts. You lie there, wondering if the pillow is judging you. It probably is. You think back to the thick feather pillow you have at home, a big squishy rectangle that remembers the shape of your head and never lectures you. By contrast, this Qing porcelain headrest has the softness of a frozen pie crust and the warmth of an emotionally distant uncle. Still, you can't help but be impressed by the craftsmanship. Your host proudly informs you that this particular pillow was passed down from their great-great-grandfather. It's hand-painted, hollow inside, and yes, it once stored fragrant herbs to promote peaceful dreaming and ward off evil spirits, or at least the stench of foot-binding ointment lingering in the air. You lean your ear against it and hear a faint echo. Maybe it's your ancestors. Maybe it's your neck cracking. Around the room, everything is deeply intentional. The walls are lined with scrolls. A single oil lamp flickers gently near a curtained window. The air is thick with the scent of dried chrysanthemum and red sandalwood. Your quilt is heavy, embroidered with phoenixes in golden thread. And right beside your ceramic pillow, a small lacquered tray holds a nighttime tea, lukewarm now, but brewed for clarity of thought, not taste. Your host settles in beside you. They're resting on a wooden pillow. Yes, wooden, carved into the shape of a crouching tiger, not just decorative. The tiger symbolizes protection in the night. Because who doesn't want their dreams guarded by a predatory jungle cat? You ask, hesitantly, if this isn't all a bit hard. Your host laughs. Soft pillows invite soft thoughts, they say. A person must sleep upright to wake up honourable. You're not sure if this is Confucianism or just an excuse for poor ergonomics, but you nod respectfully. Historians still argue whether hard pillows were actually good for posture or simply a culturally enforced endurance test. Some texts claim they promoted healthier spinal alignment. Others suggest they were used to discourage indulgent dreams and improper nighttime behaviour, because nothing says chaste thoughts like sleeping on a glazed brick. You begin to relax ever so slightly. Maybe it's the jasmine in the air, maybe it's the sheer exhaustion of pretending this is comfortable, but your mind starts to drift. You think about how pillows today are things we bury our faces into, shaped for our comfort. But here, They're something you negotiate with, objects of balance, a nightly nudge to stay upright in every sense of the word. The pillow, oddly enough, starts to feel like a metaphor, sturdy, beautiful, and just uncomfortable enough to keep you from forgetting where and when you are. And if you were to walk through this Qing household by lamplight, peeking into rooms, you'd see an entire taxonomy of sleep preferences and social cues. Scholars with cube-shaped pillows etched with calligraphy, children resting on soft, tiger-shaped headrests, newlyweds with embroidered cushions filled with dried lotus petals and symbolism so dense you'd need a priest and a poet to explain it all. Some were even scented, porcelain pillows with hollow interiors stuffed with aromatic herbs, angelica root, cassia bark, mint leaves, or crushed chrysanthemum. Not just for sleep, but for balance. You weren't just laying your head down. You were aligning your qi, adjusting your yin and yang, ensuring that your liver wasn't feuding with your kidneys, or whatever TCM logic said needed negotiating that day. Modern science might scoff, but those perfumed dreams, those gentle herbal infusions drifting up into your consciousness, they're not entirely imaginary. Sleep studies today show that scent does influence dream content. The Qing may not have had EEGs, but they understood that sleep was a ritual, not a shutdown, a sacred daily reset. And that pillow? It was the anchor. You shift once more, searching for that elusive perfect angle. Your cheek presses against the lotus blossom, and for a moment the ceramic feels almost warm. Maybe it's your imagination, maybe it's the heat of centuries, but you swear the porcelain exhales the faintest trace of ginseng and ghost stories. Outside, a breeze rattles the bamboo chimes. You're still awake, but the world has gone quiet. The pillow watches you sleep, or tries to. It's hard to tell whether it's painted fish eyes or a symbol of prosperity, or just judgmental little ovals staring up at your hairline. You've now been in Qing Dynasty China for less than one full night, and you're starting to realise that the pillow isn't just a pillow, it's an opinion. Tonight's version is glazed porcelain, but had you landed in a different household, or been born into a different class, you might have ended up with something far less refined. Clay, lacquered wood, bamboo, even stone. Each pillow told a story, and sometimes that story said, "I'm rich enough to sleep on what looks like an art exhibit." In Qing society, the pillow wasn't just a sleep aid, it was a cultural ambassador. Your choice of material, design, even angle placement could silently broadcast everything about you. Your moral compass, your gender identity, your status, your relationship with the Confucian ideal of restraint. In other words, your headrest doubled as your resume. And let's be clear, not all pillow choices were created equal. A married woman might have a crescent-shaped pillow wrapped in soft silk and stuffed with medicinal herbs. A scholar, on the other hand, might prefer a firm, rectangular pillow carved with poetry or even equations. If you were feeling extra philosophical, you could commission a jade pillow. Just make sure you didn't move in your sleep, because jade is beautiful, yes, but it does not play nicely with cheekbones. But here, it was serious. And not just in theory. There were rules. Pillow too soft. You risked being labelled morally lazy. Pillow too high. Conceited. Too low. A warning sign of low ambition. And don't even get historians started on pillow height debates. Some scholars argue that men were encouraged to sleep higher, to align their ki with the heavens, while women were guided toward more modest inclinations, quite literally closer to the earth. Others insist the rules weren't so gendered, and that pillow height mostly depended on one's social role and age. But the debate lingers, because in Qing China, where hierarchy defined everything from shoes to syllables, even your neck angle could tip the scale of judgment. You try turning to your side, a small crime. Traditionally, the upright position was encouraged, face upward, eyes closed, hands folded neatly, as though you were posing for a nap-themed scroll painting. The goal wasn't comfort, it was alignment. Spiritual, anatomical, social. If the stars, your soul, and your spine weren't all in sync, what was the point? To your surprise, the pillow creaks. That's right. Some porcelain pillows were made with tiny hidden compartments, a space to hide coins, jade trinkets, or love notes too risky for daylight. You gently tap your fingers along the side and feel the faint hollow beneath, an entire miniature chamber beneath your temple. You imagine someone centuries ago slipping a letter inside, a secret message inked in careful brush strokes, folded and tucked into the space between dreams and daylight. And for a moment, you understand. Because for all their rigidity, these pillows held layers, not just literal ones, but symbolic ones. Porcelain for purity, hollow for humility. A shape designed to elevate the head, not just physically, but spiritually. A strange thing happens as you lie there. You stop wishing for a modern pillow. You stop comparing this ceramic rectangle to your memory foam mattress back home. Instead, you wonder what your own pillow might say about you. Is it plush and neutral? A little too soft, perhaps? Does it reveal a preference for comfort over character? You glance at your host. Their head rests serenely on a lacquered wooden block shaped like a reclining lion. You're not even surprised anymore. There's a quiet dignity to all of it. A bedtime discipline that feels so alien, and yet oddly comforting. Everything has intention. Everything has history. Even this moment here in the hush of a Qing-era bedroom feels like a scene copied from some silk painting in a scroll long forgotten. The oil lamp flickers. You turn again, slowly so as not to offend your host or your porcelain companion. The pillow whispers in its silence. It has no give, no apology, just patience, as if it knows you'll adjust, that eventually you'll learn to rest not in comfort, but in conviction. Historians still debate whether these hard pillows actually helped with sleep or were more symbolic instruments of discipline. Some believe they encourage shallower, lighter sleep, ideal for early risers and midnight meditators. Others suggest they were so common people simply adapted. The spine is more forgiving than we give it credit for, or at least it was when life expectancy hovered closer to 40. Still, the symbolism runs deep. In some Taoist texts, the act of laying your head on a properly shaped and aligned pillow was part of internal cultivation. It helped focus the mind, connect the breath, settle the spirit for nightly astral travel. You weren't just resting, you were rehearsing immortality, which... no pressure. You lie still now, no more fidgeting, you've given in. And perhaps the pillow has too, just a little. It doesn't hurt anymore, it doesn't help either, but it feels solid, reliable, like it knows something you don't, and so your thoughts drift. To a scholar dozing after midnight with ink-stained fingers and a dream of passing the civil exam. To a concubine waiting for footsteps in the hallway and resting her cheek against perfumed porcelain shaped like a lotus bud. To a merchant hiding silver coins inside his headrest as protection against thieves and inflation. To a child cradling a tiger-shaped pillow as protection against evil spirits. The pillow isn't just where the day ends, it's where the story begins, so by now your neck has declared a polite protest. Your dreams are hovering somewhere between contemplative and mildly alarmed, and your face is bonding with a ceramic surface decorated in poetic fish. And still, the porcelain pillow doesn't flinch. Because in Qing Dynasty China, the pillow isn't just a household item. It's an artifact of personal philosophy. Now imagine you had options, not the one or two choices we think of today, memory foam or down, firm or fluffy, but a literal gallery of materials, shapes, textures, and embedded symbolism. And believe it or not, the porcelain version you're currently enduring was just one stop on a vast and intricate menu of pillow design. You could have been assigned a bamboo pillow, smooth, slightly more forgiving, and perfect for humid southern nights when porcelain felt too cold or too fancy. Bamboo stayed cool. It whispered when you moved. And in the right circles it was considered appropriately rustic for scholars with poetic leanings and bad ventilation. Some bamboo pillows even had slats to allow airflow, not just for comfort, but for the supposed alignment of bodily qi, the energy said to flow through everything. If your qi got stuffy, so did your dreams. Or maybe you'd have drawn the straw of lacquered wood. Heavy, dark, and beautifully polished, these headrests were built less for rest and more for maintaining a proper silhouette while you slept. Scholars adored them. The harder the wood, the sharper the mind. Or so the theory went. Some were carved with dragons or cranes, others etched with Confucian quotes like, "The gentleman remains composed even in sleep." Subtle, right? Then there were the luxurious ones. Pillows made from stone or jade, for those wealthy enough to turn bedtime into a statement. Jade pillows were cool to the touch and symbolized purity, balance, and divine connection. Also headaches, probably. Some jade pillows were believed to enhance dreams, connect one with ancestors, or improve longevity. which is a bold promise for something that could double as a weapon if you rolled over too quickly. Historians still argue whether jade pillows were actually used regularly or mostly ceremonial. Some claim they were gifted during important rites of passage, marriage, graduation, appointments to court. Others insist they were used every night by the elite as part of their devotion to bodily discipline. Either way, sleeping on jade is a choice, and not one your chiropractor would recommend, but perhaps the strangest, most fascinating material of them all, brick. Just plain brick. Usually hollowed out, sometimes painted with glaze or wrapped in cloth, the brick pillow was the utilitarian backbone of working-class sleep. Sturdy, affordable, and easy to stack when not in use. Some even had a little hole drilled through the centre, allowing airflow or storage, or possibly just because someone got bored during firing and decided to get creative. You stretch your neck slightly and think about this spectrum. Porcelain for grace, wood for wisdom, jade for status, brick for survival. Every material sent a different message, and not just to other people, but to the dreamer. The pillow wasn't just about your neck, it was about your mind. Some were even filled with things. Herbs, seeds, sand, small pebbles. Yes, pebbles. Not for sound sleep exactly, but for promoting balance. Some believed that uneven surfaces prevented stagnation of qi, that a perfectly smooth pillow meant you were coddling your spirit. A few noble households filled their pillows with green beans. Yes, literal dried green beans, because they held cooling properties and whispered when you moved, offering a kind of auditory meditation before dreams took hold. Others leaned toward what could only be described as semi-soft pillows. Not exactly yielding, but not aggressive either. Filled with millet, or sometimes mung beans, these pillows adjusted to the weight of the head, slightly. Enough to feel alive, but never enough to feel spoiled. Qing society believed in just enough comfort to be functional, but not enough to encourage laziness. That line was thin, and your pillow was the tightrope. And don't forget silk. Silken pillows were usually reserved for the upper classes, but not necessarily stuffed with anything soft. Sometimes they were just covers, elegantly embroidered shells that went over a harder material. Think of it like wrapping a brick in a designer scarf. You still weren't sleeping well, but at least you were doing it fashionably. Some families use goose down, but sparingly, and often in secret, because the idea of sleeping on feathers was considered decadent, too soft, too Western, too indulgent. You weren't supposed to sink into your dreams. You were supposed to approach them with dignity, like an audience with the emperor, or a tax inspector with a poetry collection. In certain Taoist circles, the belief went even deeper. The pillow wasn't just a tool, it was a portal. The hardness kept your soul from wandering too far during sleep. It reminded your consciousness to stay near the body, lest you drift too far into the unknown and forget the way back. Some carved little talismans into their pillows for this very reason. A phoenix to guide the dreamer, a lotus to purify the thoughts, a seal character meaning return. Whether you believed in the mysticism or not, there's something oddly grounding about the idea that your pillow could keep you safe, both physically and spiritually. A small, hard guardian that supported your head while anchoring your essence, and occasionally bruised your cheek. You lie there now, pondering how different this philosophy is from the one you know. Modern pillows promise softness, sinkage, personal memory. They contour to your shape, your whim, your mood. Qing pillows did the opposite. They shaped you. One final pillow tidbit before you drift off. Some Qing families kept guest pillows. These were slightly softer, not soft, just softer, and often embroidered with cheerful phrases or pictures of lucky symbols like peaches or bats. The idea was that visitors deserved hospitality, but not too much. You wanted them to sleep well enough to stay, but not so well that they moved in. And just for fun, some pillows included compartments, not for comfort, but for secrecy. Hollowed out inside, they could store anything from jewellery to letters to small pouches of medicinal herbs. One scholar supposedly hid exam cheat sheets in his. Another, a widow, placed dried petals inside to remember her lost husband's scent. It's hard to say how common this was, but it adds another layer to what you thought was just a glorified neck prop. So, as your porcelain pillow hums beneath your temple like a frozen teacup, remember this. In Qing China, sleep was a study. Pillows were pedagogical, and the only acceptable way to sleep in was if you were dreaming about Confucius. You lie perfectly still now, not because you're comfortable, but because moving means confronting the unforgiving edge of a porcelain lotus petal pressing into your cheek. Somewhere between determination and surrender, you've made peace with it. But as your eyes drift across the dim outlines of the room, you begin to wonder, what does your posture say about you? And in the Qing Dynasty, the answer is a lot. Here, how you sleep isn't just a matter of personal comfort. It's etiquette, it's virtue, it's a message you send without words every night when you lie down. Your sleeping position and the pillow that shapes it broadcasts more about your status, gender and beliefs than your resume ever could. In this society, lying flat on your stomach is unthinkable. That posture was considered undignified, lazy, or, let's be honest, just plain vulgar. It exposed your back to the heavens, which in traditional cosmology was disrespectful. Also, it was associated with animals. People who slept like beasts, the thinking went, would dream like beasts, and no one wanted to wake up growling. Back sleeping, on the other hand, now that was the goal. Chin elevated, eyes gently closed, arms rested neatly at your sides. It was said to mirror the stillness of a sage deep in meditation. A sleeping pose fit for a scholar or nobleman, or at least someone aspiring to look like one. Historians still argue whether these ideal sleep positions were genuinely common among the general population, or simply promoted in etiquette manuals written by and for elite men who had enough leisure time to worry about their spine's alignment with the cosmos. One particularly strict text even advised young men to train the body to lie flat, unmoving from sunset until the roosters cry. Basically, sleep like a dignified statue or risk moral decay. Women, meanwhile, had their own set of rules. A properly raised woman was expected to sleep modestly, usually on her side, with her face turned away from view and her hair coiled neatly. Sleeping in a dishevelled or exposed position, even while alone, was considered a sign of poor upbringing, which really raises the bar for what bad hair day meant back then. You shift gently on your porcelain pillow and suddenly understand why these rules existed. The pillow itself encourages stillness. Its shape, whether rectangular or crescent, cradles only part of your head. If you try to turn, it reminds you, firmly, that it's not here to coddle your indecision. It's here to support your virtue. Some crescent-shaped pillows were especially popular among women, particularly concubines and upper-class wives. The elegant curve supported the neck without compressing elaborate hairstyles, which could take hours to construct and cost a small fortune in combs, pins and lacquer. A ruined bun? Unforgivable. A flattened phoenix hairpiece? Grounds for social despair. For men, the rectangular pillow was most common. Angular, symmetrical and unyielding. Like their job prospects. These pillows often featured Confucian phrases about discipline and moral clarity. So even as they slept, a man's pillow reminded him, study harder, be filial, don't waste daylight. Even your dreams should reflect modest ambition. Now, let's not forget the children. Children in Qing households didn't escape pillow etiquette. In fact, their sleep was curated from the moment they could crawl. Toddler pillows were often shaped like tigers, turtles, or lions, symbols of strength and longevity. And while adults slept with poetry or porcelain, children's pillows were colourful, embroidered with stitched warnings like "be good" or "don't wet the bed." Practical and poetic. Some were filled with dried beans or millet, not for comfort but for noise. The idea was that a restless child would fidget, the pillow would rustle, and the mother or servant would know someone was breaking bedtime discipline, the 18th century version of a baby monitor, but with more legumes. And yes, posture was just as important for the little ones. Side sleeping was encouraged for babies, often propped with tiny bolsters or bean-filled wedges. Why? To keep them breathing properly, but also to ensure their heads didn't become misshapen. A polite way of saying not aesthetically pleasing according to elite Qing beauty standards. A round face was preferred. A balanced skull was essential. The wrong sleep position could ruin your social debut 20 years down the line. Meanwhile, elderly family members often received specially crafted pillows designed to support their posture and promote good digestion. These might include herbal fillings, sloped angles, or wider bases for additional support. The belief was that a well-aligned body at rest would allow qi to flow freely through aging joints, soothing internal organs and preserving mental clarity. Also, they'd earned it. One anecdote tells of an 82-year-old magistrate who insisted on using a stone pillow passed down from his grandfather. He believed the coolness of the stone clarified his dreams and reduced phlegm. Whether it worked or not is debatable, but when he passed away, he had the pillow buried with him. Some people carry memories to the grave. He brought neck pain. Posture wasn't just etiquette, it was medicine. Doctors of traditional Chinese medicine often prescribed sleep positions along with herbal teas and acupuncture. Suffering from indigestion? Sleep on your right side. Too much heat in the liver. Raise the head slightly and lie flat on your back. Anxiety? Sleep with the head higher than the heart, to reduce overthinking and promote calm winds of the spirit. This blending of etiquette and medicine was no accident. It reflected the holistic worldview of the Qing era, that body, mind, spirit and society all flowed through the same channels. Harmony in one led to harmony in the others. So, if your spine was crooked at night, maybe your thoughts were misaligned too. And if your dreams were troubled, well, check your pillow first. You lie there now, perfectly still, wondering how modern sleep tracking apps would interpret all this. User woke 5 times due to Confucian guilt. Heart rate steady. Qi status questionable. Still, there's something reassuring about it all. The predictability, the structure. The idea that rest can be a form of character building, that how you lay your head might reflect how you walk through the world, or at least how many metaphors your bedtime accessories can carry. As you ease into stillness again, you begin to realize that your Qing pillow isn't just propping up your head. It's holding centuries of silent sleeping expectations, and somehow that feels steady. You wake up, not refreshed exactly, but aware of the fact that you haven't moved more than an inch all night, that your neck may never forgive you, and that your cheek is faintly embossed with a lotus pattern. But also, somehow, you feel like you've passed a test. And in Qing Dynasty China, you kind of have. Because while most people today don't give much thought to the shape of their pillow, unless it's messing with their sleep or ruining their aesthetic, here in the Qing era, shape isn't just decoration, it's declaration. Every pillow has edges, curves, slopes and corners that speak a language of their own, and you're about to learn how to read it. Let's start with the rectangle. The humble, stalwart rectangle. It's the pillow of the upright man, the scholar, the bureaucrat, the Confucian model citizen who goes to bed thinking about virtue and wakes up drafting poetry about plum blossoms in frost. Rectangular pillows had straight lines just like your moral compass was supposed to. They kept the head aligned, the back straight, and the dreams properly filtered through the 5 virtues: benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, and fidelity. Then there's the crescent. This one curves delicately like the moon, gentle, elegant, and used primarily by women, not just for comfort, although yes, hairstyles had a lot to do with that, but because it represented softness, grace, and the idea of yielding in harmony with the universe. A woman who slept on a crescent pillow was seen as refined, sensitive, and tuned into the cycles of nature. Also, she was less likely to accidentally flatten her butterfly hairpins during the night. Historians still debate whether the shapes were strictly assigned by gender, or more fluid depending on household wealth and regional custom. Some archaeological finds have unearthed crescent pillows in male burial chambers, suggesting either a more flexible social structure than the etiquette books imply, or that someone simply preferred not waking up with a sore jaw. Now, things get geometrically interesting with cube pillows. Rare, but not unheard of. These were often used by younger students or minor court officials, and supposedly promoted a sense of balance in study and sleep. The cube, after all, represented stability from all angles. No matter how you turned it, it stood firm, which is lovely in theory, until you try to actually sleep on one. It's essentially a glorified dice with calligraphy. Then we get to animal shapes: tigers, turtles, lions. Pillows carved or moulded in the forms of animals held specific meanings. A tiger-shaped pillow might be given to a child to guard their dreams and ward off evil spirits. A turtle signified longevity and patience. A lion, power and protection. These were more than playful designs, they were sleeping totems. Nighttime guardians who bore your weight without complaint and, ideally, scared away the dream demons while they were at it. One particularly elaborate example found in the tomb of a Qing noblewoman was a tiger pillow with a hinged head that opened into a compartment. Inside, a single jade pendant, a sachet of dried peony petals, and a folded letter. Scholars still argue whether the letter was a poem, a prayer, or a very delicate to-do list for the afterlife. And then there were the symbolic shapes. Lotus pillows shaped to resemble a blooming flower, were favoured among Buddhist practitioners and those seeking spiritual purity. The lotus represented the ability to remain unstained amid the muck of daily life. Sleeping on one was like whispering a nightly reminder to stay serene, even while surrounded by tax collectors, gossiping relatives, or the existential dread of imperial exams. Peach-shaped pillows symbolised longevity, and were often given to the elderly or those recovering from illness. Some even included inscriptions like "sleep peacefully and live long," which is a sweet thought, until you remember the pillow is made of ceramic and shaped like a fruit too solid to actually bite. You roll your head slightly, noticing that your own pillow, a lotus design with a hollow centre, doesn't cradle so much as perch your skull like a porcelain paperweight. But as uncomfortable as it seems, there's intention in every curve. The top edge supports the neck just enough to tilt the head back, encouraging deep, open breathing and proper alignment. It's not about sinking in, it's about rising up. Modern orthopedic pillows might promise better alignment, but they don't come embossed with poetry, or shaped like celestial symbols. And let's face it, none of them double as secret storage compartments or expressions of your place in the moral hierarchy. Some Qing households even had seasonal pillow shapes. In the winter, flatter designs were used to conserve heat. In summer, curved shapes allowed better airflow. A popular summer model was the wind cave pillow, an open lattice of bamboo or ceramic with gaps designed to let cool air pass under your head. Like a personal ventilation system, only it doubled as a trap for insects and dust if you weren't careful. There were also hybrid pillows, those that combined forms, like a rectangular base with a crescent top. These were typically custom-made and used in elite households. Imagine commissioning your own personal dream shaper. It's like asking a furniture artisan to build you an ergonomic personality profile you can sleep on. The choices didn't end at bedtime either. Brides received special marriage pillows before their wedding night, often in the shape of two fish, representing harmony and fertility. These pillows were elaborately painted, sometimes with slightly cheeky inscriptions, and then packed away in the couple's bridal chest as keepsakes. Many were never actually slept on, because they were, frankly, too beautiful, or too pointy. Even monks had their own styles. Monastic pillows tended to be austere, square or oval, with no decoration except a single character etched on the side, often stillness or silence. Sleeping in a monastery meant no dreams, no distractions, and no softness. The pillow reminded you, in case you forgot, that enlightenment was not achieved through naps. As you absorb all this, literally and metaphorically, you realize something. Pillows here aren't just designed to hold your head. They're shaped to support your values, your ambitions, your cosmic alignment. You wonder what a modern shape might say. A memory foam blob? Probably, "I surrender." An inflatable travel neck pillow? I have trust issues and airport trauma. But a porcelain lotus crescent with a secret drawer full of dried jasmine. Now that says something. And so, with your neck supported by geometry and your thoughts drifting through dynasties, you sink, not into softness, but into stillness. You shift your weight slightly. Not much, just enough to remind your shoulder it still exists. Your porcelain pillow makes a tiny clink against the lacquered frame of your sleeping mat, and it hits you again. This isn't just about sleeping, it's about signalling. Because whether you're a peasant snoring in a village hut or a royal consort tucked behind embroidered silk screens, your pillow is saying something, even if your mouth isn't. So let's take a moment to compare two very different dreamers. On one side of the empire, the emperor, the son of heaven himself. His bedchamber is a multi-layered palace of protocols, painted ceiling beams, silk drapes so heavy they practically hum, incense curling lazily toward a carved dragon beam, and at the centre, a massive canopy bed carved from precious wood, gilded in gold leaf and draped in crimson, and placed at the head, not just any pillow, but a custom ceramic masterpiece. Probably lotus-shaped, possibly inlaid with jade, definitely firm. This is a pillow that says, "I rule not just in waking life, but in dreams." It may contain compartments, sachets of medicinal herbs, or even a small jade seal. The emperor's head doesn't merely rest, it contemplates, and he wouldn't sleep on feathers. That would suggest indulgence. No, his dreams must be pure, upright, imperial. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, a farmer in rural Anhui. His bed is a wooden platform above a clay hearth, still warm from cooking millet porridge hours earlier. His pillow? A simple brick. Maybe wrapped in linen, maybe not. It's chipped on one corner, and if you tap it, dust falls out. But it serves. It supports. It doesn't make promises it can't keep. This is a pillow that says, we have pigs to feed at dawn, and in between, a sea of dreamers, court ladies, monks, travelling scholars, midwives, matchmakers, street performers, each with their own version of support, some softer, some ceremonial, some inherited, and some, especially in the countryside, improvised. Think, a rolled-up coat, a folded reed mat, a small sack of rice husks. Functional, yes, symbolic, not always. But even then, the concept of a pillow retained its significance. It's tempting to assume that peasants wouldn't care about something like pillow etiquette. But the truth is, even among the working class, norms existed. There were expectations about how to treat your bedding, how to share it, and, most intriguingly, how to keep your pillow clean. Which is ironic because most Qing pillows were famously not cleaned, at least not in any modern sense. In wealthy homes, silk pillowcases were occasionally swapped out and washed, but in poorer households, pillow maintenance meant shaking it off and hoping no mice moved in. That said, many people placed a clean cloth over their pillow each night, not for hygiene, but for ritual purity. Especially before festivals, birthdays, or big harvests, a clean cloth meant clean thoughts. No one wanted to meet their ancestors in a dream with a dirty forehead. You lie still now, thinking about this spectrum, of how pillow quality reflected status, yes, but also aspiration. A merchant might splurge on a lacquered headrest, hoping to appear refined. A poor scholar might save for a porcelain one, not because it was practical, but because it hinted at prestige. The pillow was both a real object and a social fantasy. What you slept on was often what you hoped to become. Some people even gifted pillows as status markers. A newly married woman might receive one from her mother-in-law, a teacher might be given one by a grateful student, and sometimes, when a family couldn't afford a dowry, they'd include a pillow instead. One story tells of a young bride whose only marriage gift was a crescent-shaped headrest, painted with twin cranes and inscribed with the phrase, "Share dreams, not burdens." Historians still argue if that was meant sweetly or passive-aggressively. Of course, no comparison would be complete without mentioning the Forbidden City. Inside its walls, bedding was a science. Court ladies followed strict routines. Embroidered sheets were folded just so. Pillows were positioned according to rank. A concubine of the fourth rank didn't dare use a pillow meant for the third. There were designated shapes, motifs, and even approved herbs for each station. Pillow assignments were overseen by chamber supervisors, women tasked with regulating sleep arrangements. A woman who placed her pillow too close to the emperor's mat could be accused of ambition. One who moved it further away might seem aloof. The margins were razor thin. Imagine trying to fall asleep knowing a single inch could start a scandal. There's even a rumour, passed down through dusty court records and whispery folk tales, that one empress had her pillow custom designed with an internal water chamber. The goal? A cooling effect for hot summer nights. It worked beautifully, until a jealous rival sabotaged it by placing pepper powder inside the filling. That night, the empress reportedly dreamed of fire and woke up with a rash. True story? Debated? Dramatic? Undoubtedly. Back among the commoners, you'd find simpler comparisons. A shopkeeper in Guangzhou might boast a porcelain pillow with floral motifs and a line of poetry from the Qing Dynasty. A widow in rural Sichuan might keep her late husband's pillow on the altar, wrapped in red silk and offered incense once a month. A nanny might carry a travel pillow shaped like a lion stuffed with tea leaves to keep her charge's dreams calm on the road. And then there were travelling performers, opera singers, puppeteers, even fortune tellers, who carried portable pillows. These were small, lightweight, often multi-purpose. Some doubled as storage boxes. Others were just folded cloth secured with string. The idea wasn't luxury, it was continuity. You couldn't always control your bed, but your pillow, that was yours. And so here you are, somewhere between palace and pigsty, resting your head on a stiff ceramic ark, while surrounded by 400 years of bedtime meaning. And the strangest thing is, you start to get it. This isn't about comfort, not entirely. It's about identity, repetition, ritual. Your pillow isn't just a place to rest, it's a place to return, night after night. No matter where you fall in the social order, you have a space to align your body, your breath, and, if you're lucky, your dreams. You may not be royalty, you may not be a scholar, but in this moment, lying still beneath an inked scene of cranes and moonlight, you're part of something. A lineage of dreamers, each with their own shape, their own weight, their own silent signal. You're lying flat, hands resting at your sides, eyes almost closed. Almost. Because right now you're staring at the side of your pillow, and you've just noticed something unexpected. There's writing on it. Not just a name or a decorative flourish. It's a poem. Painted in fine calligraphy, brushed in black ink beneath a pale glaze that glows softly in the lamp's flickering light. The characters curve elegantly like vines in moonlight, and as your eyes trace the brushstrokes, a realization dawns. Your pillow is talking to you. Well, not literally, but in Qing Dynasty China that wouldn't be so far-fetched. Some pillows really did come with instructions, mantras, warnings, and tiny moral reminders painted right onto the surface. And tonight you've stumbled upon one of them, a porcelain pillow with an opinion. This wasn't rare. In fact, it was kind of a trend. By the 18th century, the idea that your pillow should be useful, spiritually, intellectually, morally, had caught on among the literati. If you were going to rest your head for 8 hours, why not make those hours educational? Or at the very least, character building. Think of it like sleeping on a motivational poster. Except instead of live, laugh, love, it's something like, still waters run deep, but so does laziness. Rise early. The inscriptions varied wildly. Some were poetic. Dreams drift on plum blossom winds. Some were aspirational. Cultivate the heart. Sleep with clarity. And some were, frankly, a little judgy. A foolish sleeper wastes the dawn. In modern terms, it would be like lying on a pillow embroidered with "Don't hit snooze, failure wakes earlier," which, okay, thanks Qing Dynasty. Way to kill the vibe. Historians still debate the exact purpose of these inscriptions. Some believe they were didactic, meant to reinforce Confucian ideals even during rest. Others argue they were personal expressions of the sleeper's values, aspirations, or inner life. A kind of late-night journaling, but permanent, in ink, on porcelain, and watched over by a snoring spouse. What's undeniable is the intimacy. These weren't showpieces, they were rarely displayed. The phrases were short, elegant, private, intended to be seen at bedtime, read quietly in the final moments before drifting off. A whisper from your conscious self to your dreaming one. Some pillows contained quotes from classic literature. Tang poetry was a favourite. One example from the poet Bai Jui reads, 10,000 scrolls will not warm the bed, but a clear mind sleeps sound. Simple, sleepy, a little smug. Others chose maxims from Confucian or Taoist teachings. One popular phrase, rectify the heart and sleep will follow. Another, quiet body, quiet breath, quiet dreams. Some pillows bore humorous phrases, the 18th century equivalent of bedtime sass. The rooster crows, but I do not rise, because I am not a rooster. Clever, relatable. Then there were romantic inscriptions. These were especially popular in wedding sets. A groom might gift his bride a porcelain pillow with twin mandarin ducks painted in flight, and a verse that read, let our dreams tangle like silken threads, unbroken until morning's bell. Sweet, right? But some were spicier. Pillow inscriptions could flirt, albeit within the bounds of poetic ambiguity. A well-known line from a marriage pillow reads, two hearts rest on one curve, let no blanket part us. Interpret that as you will. Of course, not all inscriptions were chosen freely. In some households, pillows were gifted with pre-written verses, usually by elders, teachers, or even employers, designed to keep you morally aligned. One particularly intense example, gifted by a stern mother-in-law to her new daughter-in-law. Silence speaks best. Hands move faster when lips are still. Yikes. One scholar's pillow, recovered from a 19th century estate, bore this masterpiece of passive-aggressive bedtime wisdom. The ink dries by dusk, but diligence stays moist forever. That's vivid. The more elite the household, the more elaborate the inscription tended to be. Some were written by professional calligraphers. Others were carved rather than painted, etched deep into the ceramic and filled with gold or black lacquer. the few were so finely done they're now considered art objects, exhibited in museums, no longer slept on, but still whispering their ancient bedtime advice to glass cases and curious tourists. And let's not forget the spiritual side. Taoist practitioners often selected pillows with calming inscriptions designed to help the mind detach from earthly concerns. A classic Taoist verse used on sleep aids: "Do not follow thought into shadow, let it pass like a drifting cloud." It was believed that words had power, and resting your head near virtuous phrases would attract harmonious dreams, or at least prevent you from dreaming about your neighbour's goat stealing your turnips again. Monks used this practice too. In temples, small stone or wooden pillows were sometimes engraved with a single character: Jing, quiet; Shan, meditation; or Wang, forget. These weren't for aesthetics, they were meditative anchors, a way of reminding the sleeper that even unconsciousness could be part of practice. Some Qing pillows even doubled as moral traps. One famously austere magistrate kept a pillow inscribed with, "He who oversleeps invites corruption." He reportedly replaced it with a softer one after retirement. No judgment. Now, consider your own situation. Your current porcelain pillow features a line in clean fluid calligraphy: Qing Xin Gua Yu, clear heart, few desires. It's subtle, balanced, serene, but also kind of a mic drop. It tells you to let go, stop grasping, quit scrolling, stop dreaming about power, wealth, or pastries. Just breathe, dream lightly, and weirdly, it works. You're not annoyed, you're amused. Because after nights of sleeping on algorithm-curated memory foam, it's refreshing to lie down on something that has the nerve to critique your ambition. You wonder what inscription you'd choose if you were commissioning one. Something humble, something poetic, something snarky. Please let me rest. I'll be better tomorrow. Or maybe just, loading, please wait. Whatever you'd pick, you understand now that this isn't a gimmick. These phrases are part of a centuries-old conversation between discipline and desire, between stillness and striving, between who you are and who you're trying to become. So tonight, as you close your eyes, you rest not just on porcelain, but on a thought, a word, a quiet little cone in clay. Your head sinks slightly, the brushstrokes press faintly into your cheek, and the message is clear: sleep with virtue, dream with intention. The pillow doesn't just hold your head, it holds your dreams. And in the case of some Qing Dynasty thinkers, it might hold something a little stranger: visions, visitations, and maybe even a portal or two. Because once you're past the firmness, the floral motifs, and the passive-aggressive poetry, you'll stumble into a more mysterious world, the realm of dreamcraft and Taoist sleep practice. Yes, the Qing were a pragmatic people. Yes, they liked order, etiquette, and stacking bricks where your face should be. But they also had a soft spot for the metaphysical. To some Qing-era scholars and mystics, sleep was not simply rest, it was a journey. And the pillow? That wasn't just where you placed your head. It was the gateway, the launch pad, the gently scolding customs officer at the border of waking and dreaming. Let's start with Taoism, because if anyone was taking naps seriously in Imperial China, it was the Taoists. They believed that dreams weren't just random mental noise, but spiritual encounters, places where your soul could wander, gain insight, receive guidance, or, if you weren't careful, pick up a ghost on the way back. And the pillow? It was key to guiding that journey. Pillows made of specific materials, especially jade, porcelain, or herbal stuffing, were thought to influence the quality and content of dreams. Jade, associated with purity and eternal life, was said to promote clear, meaningful dreams and protect the soul during its nighttime wanderings. Porcelain, when glazed in certain colours or shaped in celestial symbols like clouds or lotuses, helped balance the mind and settle emotions before sleep. Some even claimed that different pillow shapes could steer dreams in specific directions. Crescent-shaped pillows, associated with the moon and feminine yin energy, were said to enhance intuitive or emotionally rich dreams. Rectangular ones, aligned with structure and logic, could tether the soul, preventing chaotic or frightening dreams. You blink slowly, head still nestled on your own porcelain perch, and wonder, are you steering your dreams right now, or are they steering you? In certain elite households, especially among the more spiritual or philosophically inclined, pillows were sometimes infused with dried herbs selected by Taoist practitioners. These weren't just air fresheners. Each herb was believed to channel a specific type of dream. Mugwort, for visions, lotus petals, for serenity, peppermint leaves, to ward off nightmares, or indigestion depending on who you asked. Chrysanthemum, to see messages from departed loved ones. Historians still argue whether these herbs genuinely impacted dream content, or whether their influence was mostly psychological, but the records are consistent. People believed in their power. So much so, in fact, that some families stored the herbs in small pouches sewn directly into the pillowcase. Never visible, but always there. A bit like a security blanket for your unconscious mind. And then there's the dream pillow. That's not a nickname, that's an actual term. Mengzhen in Chinese, meaning pillow of dreams. These were typically porcelain or ceramic pillows inscribed not with moral warnings, but with celestial maps, alchemical symbols or Taoist talismans. The goal? To guide the soul safely through the spirit realms while the body rested. It was believed that your spirit might exit your body during deep sleep, no big deal, and roam the universe, visit ancestors, or spy on other dimensions. Naturally, you wanted it to find its way home. One famous account preserved in a Qing scroll tells of a poet who claimed to dream of walking through golden gardens filled with scrolls. When he awoke, he could recite entire verses he'd read in the dream, verses he insisted came not from his own mind, but from the heavenly libraries of the immortals. His pillow? Porcelain, inscribed with the phrase, "Dream deeply, return gently." You smile now, because honestly, you'd settle for just remembering your dreams, let alone transcribing celestial poetry. But for the Taoists, this was real. They trained for it, meditated before bed, slept in specific positions, used breathwork to settle the body and prepare the mind. All with the understanding that dreams weren't frivolous. They were access points to cosmic truth. And what about nightmares? Ah, yes, the other side of dreaming, the messy, toothy part. Nightmares in Qing China weren't just the result of bad soup. They were often interpreted as signs of spiritual imbalance, unresolved moral guilt, or disturbances in the unseen world. If your dreams were troubling, your pillow might be the first suspect, or the first tool in solving the mystery. Special exorcism pillows were used in some regions. These were often painted with tigers or lions, symbols of ferocity and protection, and placed under the heads of children or sick relatives to guard against dream demons. Some had hidden talismans inside. Others featured painted spells, visible only in candlelight. In one case, a child plagued by nightly fevers and wild dreams was given a tiger pillow, stuffed with mugwort and wrapped in red silk. The family reported that the child slept peacefully the next night. Was it placebo, magic, or just the comforting weight of belief? Even monks weren't exempt from the dream world's dangers. One record describes a Taoist priest who slept each night on a cold head pillow, a jade block he chilled in water before bed. Why? To cool the mind, calm the blood, and reduce fiery visions, what we might now call anxiety dreams. His motto? A quiet skull attracts no spirits. Catchy. And for women, dreams had another layer entirely. Many women in Qing society, especially those confined to the domestic sphere, found in dreams a kind of quiet rebellion. Some records mention dream journals kept by concubines and young wives, where they wrote not only their dreams, but the symbols and feelings they evoked. Some even corresponded with female relatives or Buddhist nuns, asking for interpretations. One pillow found in a woman's chamber bore the inscription, "My silence is my script, my dream is my voice." Scholars have called it one of the most haunting lines of domestic poetry in the era. It was a pillow not just for sleep, but for self. And so, as you lie there now, your breath deep, the night thick with incense and age-old mystery, you begin to see the pillow not just as furniture, but as invitation. To rest, yes. To realign, maybe. But also to dream with purpose. You aren't just sleeping in Qing China tonight, you're travelling. Through layers of tradition, belief, imagination and ink. Your porcelain pillow is both boundary and bridge. So, let go. Float lightly. And when you wake, if you remember anything, be it lotus blossoms or talking tigers, thank the dream pillow for carrying you safely through the night. The pillow doesn't just hold your head, it holds your dreams. And in the case of some Qing Dynasty thinkers, it might hold something a little stranger. Visions, visitations, and maybe even a portal or two. because once you're past the firmness, the floral motifs, and the passive-aggressive poetry, you'll stumble into a more mysterious world, the realm of dreamcraft and Taoist sleep practice. Yes, the Qing were a pragmatic people. Yes, they liked order, etiquette, and stacking bricks where your face should be. But they also had a soft spot for the metaphysical. To some Qing-era scholars and mystics, sleep was not simply rest, it was a journey. And the pillow, that wasn't just where you placed your head, it was the gateway, the launch pad, the gently scolding customs officer at the border of waking and dreaming. Let's start with Taoism, because if anyone was taking naps seriously in Imperial China, it was the Taoists. They believed that dreams weren't just random mental noise but spiritual encounters, places where your soul could wander, gain insight, receive guidance, or, if you weren't careful, pick up a ghost on the way back. And the pillow? It was key to guiding that journey. Pillows made of specific materials, especially jade, porcelain, or herbal stuffing, were thought to influence the quality and content of dreams. Jade, associated with purity and eternal life, was said to promote clear, meaningful dreams and protect the soul during its nighttime wanderings. Porcelain, when glazed in certain colours or shaped in celestial symbols like clouds or lotuses, helped balance the mind and settle emotions before sleep. Some even claimed that different pillow shapes could steer dreams in specific directions. Crescent-shaped pillows, associated with the moon and feminine yin energy, were said to enhance intuitive or emotionally rich dreams. Rectangular ones, aligned with structure and logic, could tether the soul, preventing chaotic or frightening dreams. You blink slowly, head still nestled on your own porcelain perch, and wonder, are you steering your dreams right now? Or are they steering you? In certain elite households, especially among the more spiritual or philosophically inclined, pillows were sometimes infused with dried herbs selected by Taoist practitioners. These weren't just air fresheners. Each herb was believed to channel a specific type of dream. Mugwort, for visions, lotus petals, for serenity, peppermint leaves, to ward off nightmares, or indigestion depending on who you asked. Chrysanthemum, to see messages from departed loved ones. Historians still argue whether these herbs genuinely impacted dream content, or whether their influence was mostly psychological. But the records are consistent. People believed in their power. So much so, in fact, that some families stored the herbs in small pouches sewn directly into the pillowcase. Never visible, but always there. A bit like a security blanket for your unconscious mind. And then there's the dream pillow. That's not a nickname. That's an actual term. Meng Zhen in Chinese, meaning pillow of dreams. These were typically porcelain or ceramic pillows inscribed not with moral warnings, but with celestial maps, alchemical symbols, or Taoist talismans. The goal? To guide the soul safely through the spirit realms while the body rested. It was believed that your spirit might exit your body during deep sleep, no big deal, and roam the universe, visit ancestors, or spy on other dimensions. Naturally, you wanted it to find its way home. One famous account preserved in a Qing scroll tells of a poet who claimed to dream of walking through golden gardens filled with scrolls. When he awoke, he could recite entire verses he'd read in the dream, verses he insisted came not from his own mind, but from the heavenly libraries of the immortals. His pillow? Porcelain, inscribed with the phrase, "Dream deeply, return gently." You smile now, because honestly you'd settle for just remembering your dreams, let alone transcribing celestial poetry. But for the Taoists, this was real. They trained for it, meditated before bed, slept in specific positions, used breathwork to settle the body and prepare the mind. All with the understanding that dreams weren't frivolous. They were access points to cosmic truth. And what about nightmares? Ah, yes, the other side of dreaming, the messy, toothy part. Nightmares in Qing China weren't just the result of bad soup. They were often interpreted as signs of spiritual imbalance, unresolved moral guilt, or disturbances in the unseen world. If your dreams were troubling, your pillow might be the first suspect, or the first tool in solving the mystery. Special exorcism pillows were used in some regions. These were often painted with tigers or lions, symbols of ferocity and protection, and placed under the heads of children or sick relatives to guard against dream demons. Some had hidden talismans inside. Others featured painted spells, visible only in candlelight. In one case, A child plagued by nightly fevers and wild dreams was given a tiger pillow, stuffed with mugwort and wrapped in red silk. The family reported that the child slept peacefully the next night. Was it placebo, magic, or just the comforting weight of belief? Even monks weren't exempt from the dream world's dangers. One record describes a Taoist priest who slept each night on a cold head pillow, a jade block he chilled in water before bed. Why? To cool the mind, calm the blood, and reduce fiery visions, what we might now call anxiety dreams. His motto? A quiet skull attracts no spirits. Catchy. And for women, dreams had another layer entirely. Many women in Qing society, especially those confined to the domestic sphere, found in dreams a kind of quiet rebellion. Some records mention dream journals kept by concubines and young wives, where they wrote not only their dreams but the symbols and feelings they evoked. Some even corresponded with female relatives or Buddhist nuns, asking for interpretations. One pillow found in a woman's chamber bore the inscription, "My silence is my script. My dream is my voice." Scholars have called it one of the most haunting lines of domestic poetry in the era. It was a pillow not just for sleep, but for self. And so, as you lie there now, your breath deep, the night thick with incense and age-old mystery, you begin to see the pillow not just as furniture, but as invitation. To rest, yes. To realign, maybe. But also to dream with purpose. You aren't just sleeping in Qing China tonight. You're travelling through layers of tradition, belief, imagination, and ink. Your porcelain pillow is both boundary and bridge. So let go. Float lightly. And when you wake, if you remember anything, be it lotus blossoms or talking tigers, thank the dream pillow for carrying you safely through the night. You stir just slightly, and something shifts. Not in the pillow, of course. It remains unmoved, eternal as a sleeping dragon, but in the air itself. A scent. Soft. Floral. A kind of faded sweetness, like dried petals left in a closed box for too long. You take a deep breath. It's coming from the pillow. This isn't some modern linen spray or an accidental spill, this is intentional. You've just encountered one of the Qing Dynasty's more underrated indulgences, the art of the perfumed pillow. That's right. Some Qing pillows didn't just support your head and discipline your moral compass. They also smelled nice, but not in the artificial plug-in scent diffuser kind of way. No, this was old-school fragrance, natural, herbal, symbolic, and, as always, deeply layered with meaning. Perfuming pillows wasn't just about making things smell good, it was about health, about balance, about setting the emotional and spiritual tone for the night ahead. The Qing believed that the nose, like the heart and lungs, was a vital entryway for qi, the life force that flowed through everything. So naturally, what you inhaled while sleeping mattered. Enter the scented pillow. There were two main approaches. The first was infusion, baking herbs or flower petals directly into the hollow of a ceramic or porcelain pillow, a sort of dream-friendly potpourri, sealed into the structure of the headrest itself. The other method was layering, placing a small sachet or cloth bundle of aromatic materials inside a removable case, or tucking it discreetly into the pillow's hollow core. The ingredients? You had options. So many options. Mugwort, peppermint, dried orange peel, osmanthus blossoms, crushed cloves, dried chrysanthemum, powdered sandalwood, cinnamon bark, patchouli. Each carried not only a scent but a meaning. Lavender was rare in Qing China, but osmanthus, sweet olive, was a favourite. Its delicate, honeyed aroma symbolised nobility and feminine charm. Families would dry the tiny blossoms, then sew them into little cloth packets and hide them inside pillows to calm nerves and enhance dreams. Peppermint cooled the blood, mugwort dispelled bad spirits, cloves stimulated the senses, and chrysanthemum, that was for longevity, mental clarity and relieving eye strain. Ideal if you'd been reading Confucian classics by lamplight all evening. Some pillows were designed specifically to hold these herbs. They featured a small corked opening or hinged lid where you could refresh the scent every few weeks. A wealthy scholar might have his housekeeper refill the blend with the seasons, cooling herbs in summer, warming ones in winter, clarity-promoting ones during exam months, and sleep-inducing blends when stress or bad dreams crept in. Perfumed pillows were especially popular in the south, regions like Suzhou and Hangzhou, where climate, artistry, and refined living intersected. These areas were famous for silk, poetry, and gardens, and if you lived in a garden-filled mansion with embroidered curtains and moon gates, you wanted your pillow to smell like something that could be written about by a Tang poet. Women embraced the trend most enthusiastically. For young brides, it was common to receive a bridal pillow scented with lotus or plum blossoms. Not only were these scents associated with virtue and beauty, but they were believed to make the dreamer more tranquil, helping her adapt to her new household, new husband, and, let's be honest, all the new judgment. Some pillows were even embroidered on the outside with what the inside contained: plum for courage, orchid for grace, peony for prosperity, lotus for purity. A quiet, floral map of the dreamscape inside. Historians still debate whether these perfumed pillows were truly effective or merely psychological. Some argue that the trace aromatherapy, however gentle, helped calm the nervous system, especially in an era without streetlights, sound machines, or Benadryl. Others point out that some of the ingredients, like mugwort and sandalwood, were mildly antimicrobial, making these early scented pillows an unintentional tool of hygiene. One surviving recipe for a summer sleep blend recorded in a Qing household manual reads: 3 parts peppermint, 2 parts sandalwood, 2 parts crushed lotus petal, 1 part dried citrus peel. Mix, wrap in silk, place under pillow, replace every 12 days or during thunderstorms. Thunderstorms? Curious. But some believe that storms stirred up yin energy, making bad dreams more likely. So naturally you'd want your pillow properly prepared. Another lesser-known blend, the Scholar's Clarity Pillow, was said to contain tiny amounts of powdered ginseng and dried goji berry, along with violet leaf and mint. This was used during exam season. Not to help you sleep more, but to help you sleep smarter. You know, efficient dreaming. And of course, there was the Heartbreak Pillow, said to be used by widows or women separated from their husbands. It typically contained bitter orange peel, safflower, rose, and occasionally a trace of camphor. Not for healing, just for surviving. One such pillow, preserved in a provincial museum, bears the inscription: "Stillness under petals, no reunion required. Poetic and devastating." Children too had their own pillow scents. Tiger pillows might be filled with mugwort meant to protect from ghosts and fevers. Some mothers made miniature sachets containing fennel and patchouli, sewing them into their child's sleeping mat or hiding them inside a lion-shaped headrest. These little pockets of fragrance were believed to strengthen the child's spirit and keep nightmares at bay. And it worked, at least for the parents. Because the ritual itself, the act of preparing a pillow with intention and care, gave them comfort. It wasn't just about scent, it was about protection. One story tells of a father who travelled frequently for work. Before leaving, he filled his daughter's pillow with osmanthus and lotus, saying, "Dream gently, I'll follow this scent home." Whether it's true or apocryphal, no one knows, but someone wrote it down, and someone else, probably in tears, preserved that pillow. Back in your own borrowed bed, you inhale again. The scent is faint now, not strong enough to name, but lingering. Something herbal, something old, and you realize it's not about the strength of the smell, it's the suggestion, the invitation. The pillow says, rest, you're safe here, breathe, and you do. You lie there as the room grows quieter. The scent softens further, and the porcelain beneath your cheek warms slightly from your skin. Not much, just enough to remind you that it's been with you all night, supporting your dreams, your thoughts, and now your breath. Perfumed or not, the pillow holds your head, but in Qing Dynasty China, it might have held your hopes too. You're lying still now, eyes closed, with a whisper of osmanthus still hanging in the air. But just as your thoughts begin to slip into that fuzzy space between memory and dream, your fingertips graze something. Fabric. Soft. Silken. Finer than anything else you've touched tonight. You lift your head slightly, and for the first time, really notice it. The pillowcase. Wait, pillowcase? Yes. And in the Qing Dynasty, this wasn't just a cloth cover for hygiene. This was a signal, a code, a textile love letter, a silken security detail, because in the delicate etiquette of Qing bedchambers, even the pillowcase had rules, flair, and meaning far beyond its function. Let's begin with what it looked like. In wealthier households, pillowcases were made from fine silk, hand-dyed, hand-stitched, and often embroidered with intricate motifs. We're not talking about a basic slip here. We're talking lotus petals climbing up a sleeve of shimmering red satin, mandarin ducks swimming beneath clouds, a single phoenix stitched in gold thread, wings outstretched across a silk field of midnight blue. Each design meant something. It wasn't just decoration, it was identity. Peonies symbolized wealth. Bamboo stood for integrity. Cranes, long life. Butterflies, romantic longing. And chrysanthemums, well, they meant you were probably sophisticated, maybe a little melancholic, and definitely someone who preferred autumn. Historians still argue whether certain designs were reserved by rank, whether phoenix motifs were limited to imperial women, or if embroidered dragons meant official status. The reality seems more flexible than the manuals suggest. There's evidence of middle-class families using auspicious motifs, blending aspiration with admiration. You may not be royalty, but your pillowcase could pretend for you. Now, let's talk about colour. Colour in Qing culture was never neutral. Red meant joy, celebration, fertility. Blue suggested loyalty and calm. Yellow was traditionally imperial, and white, reserved for mourning. That's right, white pillowcases were only used during periods of grief. After the death of a family member, households would replace their pillow covers with plain white or unadorned grey silk. These mourning pillowcases might be plain to look at, but the silence of the design carried its own heavy symbolism. You roll slightly now, running your fingers across the stitching on your own pillow. It's subtle, not showy. A row of plum blossoms twines along the edge, small and quietly defiant. The thread used? Slightly raised. You can feel the artistry. Someone took time with this. Maybe they stitched it themselves. Maybe it was a gift. Which brings us to another dimension. Pillowcases as communication. In some circles, the pillowcase became a kind of textile whisper, an object that could carry messages more safely than words. Lovers embroidered initials or secret symbols. Wives stitched private jokes or blessings for their husbands. Mothers stitched protective spells or tiny hidden characters for their children. One surviving example, preserved in a provincial museum, shows a seemingly standard peony design. But under close inspection, one petal is shaped like a small bat. Why? Because in Chinese, the word for bat, few, sounds like the word for blessing, hidden wordplay, embroidered affection. In another case, a pillowcase was found with two embroidered swallows perched on opposite sides, one with a slightly frayed wing, the other with a golden eye. A historian later discovered it had belonged to a woman whose husband travelled frequently for trade. The swallows were them, the frayed wing, his injured arm, the golden eye, her watchfulness, a nightly reunion sewn in thread. One of the more intriguing customs involved rotating pillowcases seasonally, not just for comfort, but to mark time and intention. Spring called for floral patterns, blossoms, green vines, butterflies. Summer brought cool blues, waves, or lotus. Autumn ushered in golden leaves, ripe fruit, or soaring cranes. And in winter, plum blossoms. Always plum blossoms. The flower that blooms in frost. The symbol of quiet resilience. A particularly elegant family might own an entire set of seasonal pillowcases, each washed, starched, and stored in fragrant boxes, swapped out on solstices, festivals, or birthdays. The head of the household might even choose the design based on the dream they hoped for that night. Imagine choosing between a pillowcase with carp leaping over waves, symbolizing ambition and breakthrough, or one with a sleeping cat curled in peonies, promising nothing more than calm. And then there were the coded lovers sets. Couples sometimes commissioned matching pillowcases, two halves of a larger embroidery, a moon and a river, two mandarin ducks, blossoms and bees. When the pillows lay side by side, the images connected. But if separated, by travel, by quarrel, by war, they became longing made literal. One story tells of a wife who waited 10 years for her husband to return from military service. Each year, she replaced the silk thread in her pillowcase, colour by colour, until the embroidery faded into a patchwork of years. When he returned, the first thing she gave him was the matching case he'd left behind. No words, just thread. And let's not forget the protective function. Some families stitched Buddhist or Taoist charms directly into the seams. Characters like Fu, blessing, shu, longevity, or even miniature mantras. These weren't visible. They were sewn into the hidden inner lining, where only the sleeper could feel them. A monk might sleep on a pillowcase embroidered with the Heart Sutra, the stitches pressed against his ear each night like a whispered chant. A child's pillowcase might hold 5-colour thread meant to ward off illness. Even skeptics followed these practices, not out of belief, always, but out of tradition, out of care. And what about cleaning them? Ah yes, the ritual of washing. Silk pillowcases were washed sparingly, usually by hand with cool water and rice starch. Some households added dried orange peel or magnolia bark to the water for scent and clarity. Afterward, they were dried in the shade, never in direct sunlight, which could fade the colour and damage the thread. It wasn't just laundry, it was a ceremony. Some women, particularly those who'd embroidered the pillowcases themselves, spoke of washing them like it was saying goodbye to an old thought. The thread stayed, but the scent changed. The sleep shifted. You think about that now, lying here, tracing the embroidered edge of your own borrowed pillow. It's soft, worn. Someone has slept on this thousands of nights before you. Maybe they were a poet, a mother, a merchant. Maybe they were all three. Their dreams are gone now, but their thread remains. You exhale slowly. The plum blossoms bloom beneath your temple, silent, persistent. And somehow in the dark, you feel seen. The moonlight spills across the lacquered floor in soft lines, filtering gently through the wooden lattice of your borrowed room. Everything is still. The embroidered bedding rises and falls with your breath, and under your head, that firm, familiar weight of porcelain rests quietly, bearing your dreams like a patient scribe. But tonight, there's a new thought drifting through your mind. What if this pillow had been a gift? Not just a purchase, not just part of a dowry, but a message, sent by hand, chosen with care, and delivered to say something that words couldn't. Because in the Qing Dynasty, giving someone a pillow was never just about sleep. It was about affection, etiquette, ambition, advice, memory, and sometimes, yes, very pointed judgment. Let's start with the most straightforward kind, the pillow as a gift of care. In families across Qing China, pillows were exchanged between generations as tokens of comfort and protection. A mother might give her daughter a crescent-shaped pillow before marriage, embroidered with plum blossoms and filled with dried lotus petals. A father might give his son a sturdy rectangular headrest inscribed with a poem about diligence and restraint. These weren't just well-wishes, they were quiet forms of mentoring. You might leave home, but the pillow would remind you how to live. Even among siblings, gifting a pillow could be a deeply personal gesture. It said, "I know your dreams need resting. Let me help." A younger sister might sew one for her scholar brother before he departed for the civil exams. One such pillow survives today in a museum collection. Red silk, faintly faded, with a stitched carp leaping over a stylized wave. The message? Breakthrough. Simple. Powerful. Heavy with hope. But let's shift now to the subtler language of romantic gifting, because this is where things get complicated. In many regions, especially in Jiangnan and southern provinces, the exchange of pillows between lovers or betrothed couples was a common, if carefully choreographed, ritual. A pair of matching pillows, hand-stitched or glazed with symbols of unity, was a kind of sleeping promise. We will rest side by side, in waking and in dream. One popular design featured a moon and a river, each on a different pillow. When placed together, the river flowed beneath the moon. Apart, the image made no sense. It was a poetic way of saying, "I am incomplete without you." Some were even painted to mirror each other, floral vines that joined in the middle, twin cranes in mid-flight, or mirrored poems written in calligraphy so fine it could only be read in candlelight. But this wasn't just sentiment. The materials used told a story too. A pillow filled with osmanthus blossoms whispered feminine longing. One filled with clove or dried orange peel might symbolize warmth and resilience, and a pillow wrapped in red silk. That was bold. That meant, I'm not just flirting, I'm sure. One recorded instance from a Qing-era diary describes a young man who gifted a porcelain pillow to a merchant's daughter. The glaze was deep blue. The inscription, "One heart lies still, waiting." She returned it 3 days later, same pillow, but with a new verse added on the other side. Stillness is not silence. They were married within the year. Of course, not all pillow gifts came from lovers. Some came from friends, mentors, or students. A retiring teacher might receive a painted pillow from his pupils, signed with a poem of gratitude. A family friend might send a lion-shaped child's pillow stuffed with aromatic herbs to celebrate a newborn's 100th day. These gestures were gentle, public, and well understood, like sending flowers, but more durable and usually more poetic. But sometimes, a pillow was also a protest. Yes, even in the world of slow-moving etiquette and embroidered metaphors, there was shade, and few tools were better for it than a carefully chosen, subtly insulting pillow. Imagine this. A noblewoman receives a gift from a visiting relative. It's beautifully wrapped, embroidered, lavish. But the inscription on the pillow reads, "The still river reflects only what is shown. In other words, I see through you." There's another example, less subtle, from a well-documented case in northern China. A concubine, disgruntled at being passed over in favour of a rival, sends a tiger-shaped pillow to the new favourite. Inside the tiger's hollow, not sweet-smelling herbs, but chili peppers and dried ginger, known for inducing heat and discomfort. The note attached, "To warm your dreams as you've warmed his nights." Ouch. Historians still debate how widespread this kind of passive-aggressive gifting truly was. Some argue these are isolated cases, exaggerated by gossip and record-keeping clerks who loved a little scandal. Others believe this was just another way the Qing elite expressed competition, coded, quiet, and embroidered in silk. But not all pillow gifts were political or romantic. Some were about legacy. In many families, pillows were passed down through generations, not just as heirlooms, but as quiet repositories of memory. One grandmother's crescent pillow, still faintly scented with rose and vetiver, might be given to a granddaughter on her wedding day. A scholar's worn ceramic pillow, inscribed with Confucian quotes and calligraphy worn smooth, might be passed to a nephew embarking on his own path of study. These pillows weren't always beautiful, but they held weight, and that weight was comforting. One poignant tale tells of a widow who embroidered a new pillow for her grandson, including her late husband's name in a hidden seam. The pillow was plain, cotton and linen, but the stitching was precise. It bore no poem, only a stitched character, "Shoe us to keep," or to guard. The boy slept on it until adulthood. When he left for the capital, he packed it in his travelling trunk. It was found with his belongings when he died at 83. Even today, in rare corners of rural China, traces of this tradition survive. Old women still stitch protective verses into children's pillowcases. Couples commission silk pillow covers with quiet floral designs and ancient idioms. And somewhere, tucked into a museum drawer or a wooden chest in someone's ancestral home, there's a ceramic pillow still carrying the scent of dried chrysanthemum and the curve of someone's once resting head. You press your cheek into your own pillow now, the glaze warm from hours of quiet dreaming. There's no inscription here, no floral embroidery or moonlit duck motif, but somehow you feel the echo of all the messages that might have been sewn into its shape. It's not soft, but it's honest, and maybe that's what the best gifts are. So tonight, whether your dreams are filled with poems, promises, or unanswered questions, know this. Your pillow hears you. It always has. The room has faded into silence now, the kind of silence that feels dense, like something you could lean against. You shift slightly on your porcelain pillow, careful not to disturb the line of your thoughts. And as your breath slows, a new idea begins to bloom. If children in Qing Dynasty China had their own pillows, and they did, what exactly did those look like? Because this culture, it didn't believe in mini versions of adult things. Children's pillows weren't just scaled-down porcelain blocks or soft cloth bundles. No, they were full-fledged characters in the bedtime routine. Colourful, animal-shaped, herb-filled, and embroidered with stories before the first dream even arrived. Let's start with the most famous, the tiger pillow. If you were a child born into a Qing family, regardless of class, there's a good chance your first pillow was shaped like a tiger. Bright yellow or red, stitched from cotton or silk, with an embroidered snout and felt teeth. The tiger pillow wasn't just cute, it was protective. The tiger, after all, was the king of beasts, the symbol of courage, strength, and guardian energy. If you were a child vulnerable to night terrors, fevers, or bad dreams, the tiger was there to pounce on your fears before they reached you. One folk belief held that a child sleeping without a tiger pillow would be more prone to illness. Another claimed that tigers could chase away ghosts, especially the petty kind, the ones that tickled your toes or whispered nonsense into your ears just as you were falling asleep. But tiger pillows weren't all bark and raw. They were often filled with scented herbs, fennel, patchouli, mugwort, meant to ward off disease and settle restless energy. A child might fall asleep with a tiger beneath their head and wake up believing they'd been riding one through their dreams. Historians still debate whether these pillows were toys or tools. Some suggest they were mostly symbolic, used during early infancy, and then transitioned to firmer, more grown-up designs. Others argue that children often slept on them well into adolescence, particularly if they'd formed a sentimental attachment. Think baby blanket meets herbal remedy, meets nightstand monster slayer. But tigers weren't the only creatures prowling Qing pillows. There were turtle pillows, symbols of longevity, endurance, and wisdom. Soft, low, and often used for toddlers. A child's first turtle pillow might be stitched with the phrase, "Slow steps, long journey." Practical advice, and probably a reminder to the parents too. Fish pillows were common among coastal families or households that made a living from trade. Fish symbolized abundance and good luck, especially when paired. Children were encouraged to dream of water, movement, and good harvests. And in some regions, pillows shaped like lotus roots, segment by segment, were given to infants to encourage peaceful sleep and harmonious family relations. One rare, documented example includes a pillow in the shape of a coiled dragon, given to the firstborn son of a merchant family. It was made of stiff cotton and embroidered with clouds and fireballs. The inscription read, "Dream boldly, my little thunder." Subtle, not exactly, but deeply affectionate. There was also seasonal pillow rotation for children. Summer, lightweight cloth pillows filled with cooling herbs like mint and wormwood. Winter, heavier silk-wrapped ones padded with flax or crushed tea leaves for warmth. During festivals like the Lunar New Year or the Dragon Boat Festival, new pillowcases might be introduced, each marked with celebratory colours, paper talismans, or festive slogans stitched in red thread. And then there were educational pillows. Yes, you read that right. Some wealthier families commissioned custom pillows for their sons or daughters as part of their early literacy journey. These might be painted or embroidered with the three-character classic, simple idioms, or moral lessons like be diligent and filial. The idea was that even during rest, the young mind would be absorbing the rhythms of virtue. One well-preserved pillow from the early 1800s bears the text, "Early to rise, early to read, even a peach tree begins as seed." Adorable, slightly pushy, very Qing. Girls' pillows, in particular, carried layered meaning. A young girl might sleep on a pillow embroidered with butterflies, symbols of transformation and gentle joy. But as she grew older, her pillows might adopt subtler motifs, plum blossoms, bamboo shoots, or stylized cranes. These were nudges, soft symbols preparing her for her expected roles in virtue, family, and silence. One bittersweet example tells of a girl whose parents embroidered her pillow with the characters gentle breeze, clear moon. They hoped for her a peaceful marriage, a calm household. The pillow was passed to her daughter, then to her granddaughter. All three generations' initials are stitched into the back lining, tiny hidden letters in fading ink. But not all children's pillows were elegant or philosophical. Some were just delightfully chaotic. Street vendors in market towns sold pillow puppets, stuffed animals shaped like rabbits, foxes, or mice that doubled as neck rests and daytime toys. Children chewed on their ears, tossed them down staircases, and occasionally tried to trade them for sweets. One surviving fox pillow has mismatched eyes, a missing tail, and a secret compartment stitched into its belly. Inside, a marble, a peach pit, and a faded paper charm reading, "No nightmares allowed." There were festival pillows too, seasonal gifts filled with rice grains, beans, and lucky coins. These were often temporary, meant to be displayed during the holiday season and then tucked away. In the new year, some families gave children firecracker-shaped pillows wrapped in red silk, meant to frighten away bad spirits with symbolic pops of good fortune. And let's not forget birthday pillows. On a child's birthday, a new pillowcase might be embroidered with their age, zodiac animal, and a single wish for the coming year. Some families kept each year's pillowcase as a keepsake, creating a textile timeline of growth and memory, a literal stack of dreams. Of course, not every child in Qing China had silk and embroidery. In the countryside, children often slept on folded straw mats, simple wooden blocks, or hand-stitched cloth bundles filled with millet. But even there, the care was visible. A mother might wrap a pillow in a worn apron. A grandmother might paint a red dot at the centre to protect against night visitations. Every head had a home, every dream had a guard. And now, in the hush of this candlelit room, you lie still, your own grown-up head cradled by a porcelain ark etched with plum blossoms. But somewhere in your memory, a tiger roars gently. A stitched lion smiles toothlessly. You remember what it felt like to be protected by a pillow. Not just held, but watched over. Because in Qing Dynasty China, childhood wasn't just about growing up. It was about dreaming safely. And your pillow, that was your first shield. So tonight, close your eyes. The tiger's watching, the fish are swimming, and the night holds nothing but sleep. The candle has burned low now, a little puddle of wax gathering in its bronze dish. The shadows in the room have softened, stretching longer and quieter. And just when you think you've settled into the most peaceful sleep of your life, or at least the most historically educational one, your mind drifts to a question. What were the pillows like inside the Forbidden City? Because if a provincial scholar's pillow could quote Confucius, and a toddler's pillow could growl like a tiger, then surely the palace, the heart of the empire, had its own breed of bedtime etiquette. And you would be right. Inside the Forbidden City, the imperial pillow wasn't just a tool for rest. It was a political object, a ceremonial prop, a decorative statement, a status symbol, and on more than one occasion a closely guarded secret. Let's start with the emperor himself. The son of heaven didn't sleep like everyone else. His bedchamber, located deep within the palace of heavenly purity, was layered in symbolism. Every surface radiated cosmic significance. From the dragon motifs carved into the headboard to the precise north-south alignment of the bed, which mirrored the emperor's role as the earthly axis of order. And at the head of that sacred sleeping platform, a porcelain or lacquered wood pillow, painted, glazed, and often inscribed with verses meant to reinforce virtue, clarity, and longevity, sometimes shaped like a lotus, other times rectangular or even double-tiered for posture, but always cool, elegant, and unmistakably imperial. These pillows were made not just for the emperor's head, but for his image. Foreign dignitaries who glimpsed the imperial chamber reported seeing pillows inlaid with jade carved from precious wood or painted with gold enamel. Some accounts suggest the emperor had multiple pillows, seasonal variations, ceremonial versions, and even dream pillows gifted by astrologers. One surviving imperial pillow is painted with 2 dragons chasing a pearl and includes a seal reading, "Let no dream drift beyond the order of heaven." Poetic, slightly unsettling, extremely on brand. But it wasn't just about the emperor. Within the palace walls lived hundreds of people, empresses, concubines, eunuchs, servants, scholars, seamstresses, and monks, and each of them had a rank, a duty, and yes, a designated pillow. Let's talk about the harem. The women of the imperial court had a highly codified sleeping arrangement system. The higher a woman's rank, the more elaborate her sleeping quarters, and the more ornate her pillow. First-rank consorts slept on embroidered silk bolsters or crescent-shaped porcelain pillows with twin phoenixes. Second-rank women used similar materials, but their pillows were smaller, their embroidery less opulent. Third-rank women, no phoenixes, maybe a peony or plum blossom. The symbolism dropped like status points. And yes, there were rules about placement. How far the pillow sat from the edge of the bed, what colours were allowed, which herbs could be used inside the pillow on specific festival nights. During the Mid-Autumn Festival, some women slept on osmantha-scented pillows. During the Qingming Festival, only unscented ones were permitted to honour the dead. Historians still debate whether these distinctions were strictly enforced or quietly bent. But what's clear is that your pillow told the palace who you were, literally. Some had your rank stitched discreetly into the case, others were embroidered with your room assignment. One recovered example from a third-rank concubine is labelled, almost bureaucratically, with her bed's registry number. Then there were the eunuchs, the invisible machinery of the palace. They didn't enjoy the luxuries of the elite, but they still had designated bedding. Their pillows were usually utilitarian, cotton-stuffed bundles, perhaps with modest embroidery or a protective charm sewn into the edge. One rare find features the character Ren Endure, a quiet mantra for the men who kept the palace running. But perhaps the most fascinating part of palace pillow culture lies in what we might call pillow secrets. You see, in a space where letters could be intercepted and privacy was scarce, pillows became hiding places. Some ceramic pillows had hollow cores, not just for cooling but for concealment. A note, a lock of hair, a sachet, a scroll no longer than your palm. There are documented cases of messages being smuggled between rooms via hidden pillow compartments. One story tells of a concubine who communicated with her exiled brother using verses hidden in her pillow's base. Another tells of a court lady who stored poetry inside her pillow, not to send but to preserve, just in case she disappeared without a trace. Some pillows bore what looked like decorative cracks, but were actually removable seals. Others had false bottoms, hinged lids, even double walls. Were these features designed by artisans for espionage? Or were they repurposed by clever hands desperate for privacy? Historians still argue over how widespread these practices were. Some say they were rare exceptions. Others suggest they were part of the unspoken network of survival among palace women. Part diary, part confessional, part lifeline. And of course, there's the matter of pillow rotation. Yes, even pillows had schedules in the palace. Imperial housekeepers maintained detailed inventories of textiles, bedding, and seasonal accessories. Pillows were aired monthly, covers were replaced weekly. On festival days, special pillowcases, embroidered with auspicious characters like few, fortune, or shu, longevity, were added to elite beds. During times of illness, pillows were removed and burned if contamination was suspected. Nothing was left to chance, and the Empress. She had her own staff of attendants whose duties included pillow preparation, selecting the proper height, adjusting the angle for comfort, replacing the herbs with fresh blends chosen by palace physicians. There's a record of an empress who refused to sleep unless the pillow had been warmed by hand for 30 minutes beforehand. Another demanded 3 pillows layered beneath her head. 1 porcelain, 1 cotton, 1 filled with chrysanthemum. High maintenance? Absolutely. But when your dreams might be read as omens, you don't risk a kinked neck. There were even palace superstitions about which side of the pillow should face up. One tradition held that flipping the pillow unannounced would reverse your fortune. Another warned against placing a pillow too close to the bed's edge, lest your spirit slip off during the night and fail to return by morning. In one tragic account, a young concubine was said to have died after such a spirit misplacement. Her pillow was later found turned upside down. The record doesn't say who flipped it. You lie still now, tracing your fingers along the side of your own porcelain rest. No dragons, no registry mark, no secret compartment. But somehow, it carries the weight of everything you've just learned. Because inside the Forbidden City, a pillow wasn't just for sleeping. It was a stage for politics, a canvas for rank, a hiding place for fear, for love, for longing. A reminder that even in the most opulent, structured, rule-bound place in the world, someone, somewhere, was still lying awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if their dreams meant anything at all. And maybe tonight, so are you. The palace fades into memory now, its cold corridors and jeweled headrests dissolving like mist as your breath slows. But before you sink fully into sleep, you find yourself drawn to one final corner of Qing Dynasty pillow culture, one that is perhaps the most human of all: mourning. Because what happens when the person who once dreamed beside you no longer does? In Qing China, where ritual was law and etiquette governed everything from soup temperature to star-watching times, mourning wasn't just a state of emotion. It was a blueprint, a full-body, full-house transformation. And naturally, the pillow, the most intimate object in a person's life, played a part in that transformation too. Let's begin with colour. As you might recall, white was the colour of mourning in Chinese culture. Not black, not grey, but white. Plain, raw, soft in its sorrow. So when a loved one passed, the first thing a family might do, after donning rough hemp robes and shaving their heads, was to replace every pillowcase in the home with one of unadorned white cotton or linen. No embroidery, no flowers, no idioms or verses, just blank pale fabric. A quiet void where once there had been poems and plum blossoms. These mourning pillows were often coarser in texture. It was said that softness was indulgence, and in mourning, indulgence was to be avoided. You did not get to rest in comfort while the world wept. Your grief must be plain, and even your sleep should reflect your loss. But it didn't stop there. Widows in particular were expected to follow very specific pillow customs. Upon her husband's death, a widow would move into a separate mourning chamber, usually a smaller room with minimal furnishings, and there she would sleep alone on a single pillow, often made of unglazed ceramic or untreated wood. Some records mention widows sewing mourning verses directly into the seams of these pillows. One preserved example reads, "The bed remains, the breath does not. Poignant, devastating, stitched in black thread, barely visible unless you knew where to look." Historians still argue whether these verses were expressions of personal grief or rituals passed down through female relatives. Some believe they were private acts of devotion, others suggest they were performative, expected, part of the theatre of filial piety. But make no mistake, these were real women, feeling real loss, trying to sleep in rooms that suddenly felt too wide. One practice, largely forgotten today, involved turning the pillow of the deceased. When someone died, their pillow was often turned upside down and placed beneath their head for burial. The symbolic reversal was meant to represent the turning of the soul, from life to death, from dream to rest. In some regions, the pillow was cut open and its contents burned, releasing any residual dreams the deceased might have forgotten to finish. In more elaborate funerals, the pillow itself became a ceremonial object. Porcelain pillows glazed in pure white or painted with cranes and clouds were placed beneath the head of the dead, especially among wealthier families. A soft wooden pillow might be inscribed with the character Qing, stillness. Others bore entire poems about sleep, eternity, and return. One particularly moving example comes from the burial of a retired magistrate. His family commissioned a custom pillow, glazed in pale blue, inscribed with a single line, "May the court of dreams be fair." Even in death, the man remained a judge, though now of moonlight and mist. But not all mourning was for others. Sometimes a person commissioned their own mourning pillow, an object prepared ahead of time, kept in a drawer, waiting. Especially among monks, scholars, and poets, it was not uncommon to create one's own final resting object, often inscribed with a verse they had written themselves. One elderly scholar, whose writings survive only in fragments, left behind a pillow made of black lacquered wood inscribed with, "When I forget my name, may the grain of this wood remember me." Chilling, humble, and somehow comforting. Even children were included in these rituals. When a child died, their favourite pillow, often a tiger or rabbit, might be laid with them, or burned, or gifted to another child in the family, with the belief that the first child's dreams might protect the second. Some families stitched charms into these pillows posthumously. One such example reads, "Carry his laughter to the clouds." Of course, not all mourning was tragic. Some was quiet, reflective. A pillow might be kept on a shelf, unused but still present as a reminder. An elder's headrest, a spouse's wedding pillow, a mother's embroidered gift. These relics weren't always placed in shrines or on altars. Sometimes they just stayed in the room, not as ghosts but as guardians. In one family, the story goes, a pillow inscribed with a grandmother's handwriting was passed down for 4 generations. It was never slept on, just held. And what about dreams? There was a belief, still whispered in some regions, that the dead could visit the living through pillows. If you slept on the deceased's pillow on the 7th night after their passing, they might come to you in a dream, sometimes to say goodbye, sometimes to offer comfort, occasionally to deliver unfinished business. This practice was known as returning dream sleep, and was both feared and hoped for. One widow reported dreaming of her husband sitting beside her, straightening her bedding, and muttering that she'd forgotten to add enough cloves to the pillow herbs. She woke up crying and laughing. No one told her what it meant, but the next night she added the cloves. And so, as you lie here now, warm breath against porcelain, candle reduced to a glowing stub, you begin to understand that mourning in Qing China wasn't hidden. It was stitched, glazed, painted, and lived with. The pillow wasn't removed, it was transformed. Where once there had been colour, there was now white. Where once there had been scent, now silence. But the object remained. The shape stayed. The dream still arrived. It simply arrived more slowly. So tonight, whether you grieve or remember or simply rest, know this. The pillow endures. It softens. It holds. And even in sorrow it whispers, "Sleep." You're not alone. You stir slightly, nestled into the curve of your porcelain headrest. the candle now nothing more than a faint thread of smoke curling toward the ceiling. And as the room fades into hush once again, another corner of Qing Dynasty life begins to unfold in your sleepy mind, the seasonal rituals of bedtime. Because if you think modern people are particular about their sleep routines, temperature apps, lavender sprays, silk eye masks, just wait until you see what bedtime looked like across the Qing calendar. These folks treated bedtime like a seasonal ceremony. Your pillow, your herbs, your sleep posture, even your dreams were adjusted and optimized in accordance with the time of year, the movement of the moon, and of course, the rules of proper decorum. Let's start with spring. Spring, the season of renewal. As plum blossoms emerged and garden walls unfroze, Qing households would transition from winter bedding to lighter linens. But it wasn't just about swapping thick quilts for thinner sheets. Spring pillows were changed too. In many homes, especially in the literati class, spring pillows were infused with new herbs, mostly chrysanthemum for clarity, orange peel for energy, and sometimes dried apricot blossoms for scent. One popular blend was even called Awaken Heart Pillow Powder, and was believed to help clear the mind of winter sluggishness. Pillowcases also changed in spring, replaced with fresh silks dyed in green, pale yellow, or soft floral prints. A favourite motif? New vines curling around a moon, sometimes stitched with lines like, "Sleep lightly, the world begins again." Historians still debate whether these rituals were rooted more in medical belief or poetic whimsy. Some argue that springtime herbs had real decongestant effects. Others think it was more about the symbolism, waking your spirit up as the earth did the same. As spring deepened into summer, so too did the need for coolness. And this is where the porcelain pillow really earned its stripes. Porcelain was prized in summer for its ability to stay cool even on the stickiest nights. But that wasn't enough for some households. Summer pillows were often pre-chilled, placed in shaded courtyards or even stored in ceramic tubs filled with river stones to drop the temperature. A wealthy household might instruct a servant to flip the pillow every hour before bed to ensure the cool side was at optimal refreshment. And the herbs? Think cooling blends. Mint, sandalwood, lotus petal, and sometimes the lesser-known baiji, angelica root, which was believed to cool the body and cleanse the soul. Pillow inscriptions also shifted in tone during the hot months. Gone were the warnings and stern poetic reminders. Summer pillows often featured shorter, breezier phrases like, "Drift like a reed," "Let heat pass like a thought." The moon cools more than the fan. Pillow shapes in summer sometimes changed too. Crescent pillows were favoured, offering more airflow around the neck, and for children, small flat pillows filled with mung beans or millet husks were popular for their breathability and soft rustle. And now, the world tilts again, and the autumn wind begins to arrive. Autumn was perhaps the most emotional season for Qing sleepers. In poetry, autumn represented nostalgia, reflection, and the quiet knowledge that all things change. As such, pillows in autumn often took on more somber tones. Pillowcases shifted to gold, rust, or deep blue. Embroidery leaned toward falling leaves, migrating birds, or the lone chrysanthemum blooming defiantly in frost. One pillow preserved from the late 1800s features a delicate scene, two cranes flying against a storm-grey sky, with a tiny poem stitched in one corner. All things fall, but sleep stays warm. It's not all gloom though. Autumn was also seen as a season for dreams with purpose. Many families refreshed their pillow herbs with blends to sharpen memory, promote deep thinking, or inspire insightful dreams. Ginkgo, dried fig, and clove were among the favourites. Scholars often added a hint of sandalwood to stimulate clarity, especially in the weeks leading up to civil service examinations. And what about winter? Winter. The season of hibernation, stillness, and fortified blankets. In the north, where the cold could crack windows and still tea mid-pour, families broke out their thickest bedding and their warmest pillows. These were often not porcelain at all, but cotton or wool-filled bolsters wrapped in heavy fabric. Crescent pillows were swapped for full-sized cushions. Some were even layered, an inner pillow for shape and an outer pillow for warmth. But here's the twist. Some elite households missed the cooling feel of porcelain, so they used a hybrid winter design. A porcelain core wrapped in padded cloth, allowing for both structure and heat. Ingenious, mildly over-engineered, absolutely very Qing. Herbs for winter, warming ones naturally. ginger, cinnamon bark, dried dates, even tiny bits of crushed walnut shell. These were believed to help blood circulation, ward off cold-induced melancholy, and ease the body into deeper sleep. And, as always, pillow inscriptions changed to match the season. In winter, they were often about survival, endurance, and the comfort of rest. One common verse read, "Sleep thick, wake late, the plum still blooms." You can almost feel the blanket being pulled higher. Of course, pillows weren't the only bedtime element affected by the seasons. Bed curtains were swapped out. Sleep positions were altered, facing away from cold breezes, for example. Some even followed seasonal sleep clocks, based on traditional Chinese medicine's body rhythms, adjusting sleep and wake times by season. But perhaps the most poetic tradition of all was the first dream of the new year. It was believed that the dream you had on the first night of the lunar year would set the tone for the entire year to come. As such, many families took elaborate care in preparing the pillow for this night, choosing fresh herbs, clean cases, special inscriptions, or even hand-drawn talismans to be tucked inside. One family in Suzhou reportedly passed down a jade pillow used only on this night. It was stored the rest of the year in a carved sandalwood box. On New Year's Eve, it would be unwrapped, scented with plum oil, and placed under the head of the eldest child in the family. The dream would then be shared at breakfast, written down and tucked into the family ledger like a bookmark for the coming months. Historians still argue whether these rituals were spiritual, superstitious, or simply comforting in their repetition. But either way, they paint a picture of people who saw sleep not as a pause, but as a rhythm, one that danced with the seasons, changed with the moon, and required just as much attention as waking life. So tonight, wherever you are in the calendar of your own days, whether it's autumn in your bones or spring in your breath, your pillow knows, it's listening, adapting, holding space for your dreams no matter how the wind outside may shift. Sleep doesn't just happen. In Qing Dynasty China, it was cultivated like tea, like gardens, like love. The wind outside is gentler now. It hums against the wooden walls like a distant string instrument, as if the night itself were exhaling. You shift again, just slightly, on your porcelain pillow. And as your cheek rests against its cool surface, another piece of this long-lost world rises to meet you, the role of pillows in Qing Dynasty health and medicine. Because believe it or not, your humble headrest wasn't just for comfort or decoration. It was a medical instrument, a preventative tool, a subtle prescription whispered in ceramic and silk. And for Qing physicians, many of whom practiced traditional Chinese medicine as both science and art, the pillow was just as important as the pulse. Let's start with posture. The shape and angle of your pillow determine not just comfort but energy flow. According to traditional beliefs, the body's QI, or life force, circulated along invisible meridians. If your head and neck were poorly aligned during sleep, that qi could stagnate, and stagnation meant trouble, headaches, fatigue, poor memory, even bad dreams. Thus, the correct pillow was a cornerstone of preventative care. A common rule, the pillow must elevate the neck just enough to keep the spine straight and the breath smooth. Too low, the qi pools; too high, the qi breaks. The ideal pillow height, some manuals suggested, was 3 fingers tall, or roughly the width of a bundled hand. Doctors sometimes prescribed specific pillow shapes based on ailments. Suffering from heart palpitations? Use a crescent pillow to ease pressure on the chest. Prone to nosebleeds? A firmer rectangular design encouraged cooler circulation. Trouble focusing? Try a pillow filled with crushed bamboo leaf to soothe heat rising to the head. One famed Qing physician, Wu Qian, wrote that a man may eat poorly and recover, but a man who sleeps poorly invites 10,000 illnesses. Dramatic, a bit, memorable, certainly, but pillows weren't just about height. They were about material. We've seen porcelain for its cooling effects, and cloth for its warmth. But in the world of medicine, each material had a function. Jade pillows, while rare, were prized for their yin energy, believed to cool the blood, calm the liver, and promote longevity. Wood pillows, particularly those carved from sandalwood or cypress, were thought to absorb excess heat and ward off fire ailments, like night sweats or racing thoughts. And herbal pillows, a pharmacy under your ear. Let's take a closer look at some popular medicinal pillow blends. Mugwort, AE, used for protection, especially in children and the elderly. Believed to dispel dampness and repel evil spirits, not necessarily in that order. Chrysanthemum, calming, good for headaches and eye strain, ideal for scholars or anyone reading by oil lamp late into the night. Mint, cooling, used in summer or during fevers. Sandalwood, warm, grounding and aromatic. Prescribed for anxiety, dream disturbances or restlessness. Angelica root, dangi, promoted blood circulation, sometimes used in women's pillows postpartum. A full herbal pillow blend could contain up to 10 different ingredients, each chosen for season, constitution, age, and ailment. These blends were usually wrapped in gauze or soft cotton pouches, then tucked into the hollow of the pillow or stitched into its lining. Historians still argue whether these pillows had a real pharmacological effect, or whether their benefits came from scent, ritual, and expectation. But even skeptics agree. When your bed smells faintly of ginseng and plum blossom, you feel something shift inside, and there's more. Some doctors recommended dream therapy as part of a treatment plan. If a patient suffered from recurring nightmares or night terrors, they might be advised to change pillows, switch herbs, or even realign the bed. The idea was simple. Dreams were diagnostic. If you were being chased, falling, or unable to speak in dreams, it meant the key of the heart was unsettled. One documented case tells of a woman plagued by dreams of drowning. Her physician prescribed a new pillow filled with red dates, lotus seed, and powdered turmeric. Within a week, her dreams reportedly shifted, from drowning to sailing. Placebo? Possibly. But in her household it was considered a full recovery. And yes, there were emergency pillows. Small, portable headrests carried by travellers or used during illness. Some even doubled as storage boxes for remedies. One military officer's travel pillow was discovered to have a hollow base containing bandages, dried ginger, and 2 vials of vinegar tincture. A doctor in the making, or simply a well-prepared napper. Among older patients, there was a tradition of preparing final sleep pillows. These weren't morbid, they were simply practical. Pillows intended to be used during one's last years, often infused with herbs for comfort and clarity. Some included calming blends meant to assist with passing peacefully. One rare example bears the phrase, "Let me sleep as softly as I lived." And what of pillow abstention? Yes, even that existed. Some monks, ascetics, and scholars believed in no pillow sleep, a practice intended to align the spine fully and reduce attachment to comfort. There's a famous Qing anecdote about a monk who slept on a flat wooden board, refusing all pillows, even when offered a silk cushion by an emperor. His reply, "If the mind is upright, the head finds its own rest." A bit judgy, but you get the point. Of course, the average person in Qing China wasn't tossing out their pillows for enlightenment. They were more likely to follow modest advice. Switch herbs with the season, adjust height as needed, and never, under any circumstance, let the pillow become damp. Dampness, in traditional Chinese medicine, was the enemy of health. A wet pillow, a guaranteed recipe for coughs, joint pain, or general malaise. One medical manual from the era even includes a diagram showing the ideal pillow drying position, angled toward the sun, wrapped in gauze, herbs inside removed for airing. It reads more like a recipe than a chore. But again, this was a culture that saw bedtime as medicine. And so here you are now, head resting quietly, spine aligned, well mostly, with no mugwort in sight. But the spirit of the practice remains. Because whether it was a porcelain ark etched with dragons or a cotton roll stitched by a grandmother's hand, the Qing Dynasty understood that how you sleep was just as important as how you live. The pillow wasn't just a resting place, it was a diagnosis, a prescription, a little brick of care disguised as furniture. So tonight, let it do its work. Let it hold the weight of your thoughts, ease the drift of your dreams, and align you, not just physically, but gently, quietly, profoundly, with the rhythm of rest. You don't move much now, just a small shift of your hand beneath the covers, your fingers grazing the rim of your cool porcelain pillow. It's almost become a companion by this point, a silent observer to your sleepy wandering. And as your thoughts roll lazily into the next curve of the night, you find yourself wondering, who made these pillows? Because while we've marvelled at their elegance, their symbolism, and their purpose, we haven't yet explored the hands behind the glaze, the artists, the labourers, the calligraphers who etched poems in cobalt, the women who embroidered silent wishes into silk seams. Yes, someone made these headrests, and in the Qing Dynasty, the making of a pillow was no small matter. Let's start with the porcelain variety. The most iconic? the most enduring. These pillows were primarily crafted in kilns located in Qing, often referred to as the porcelain capital of China. By the Qing era, Qing had already been producing fine ceramics for over 1,000 years. But under imperial patronage, it became something more, a machine of beauty. The ceramic pillow makers were specialists. Their work sat somewhere between potter and engineer. The goal wasn't just to create something hard and hollow. It had to be ergonomic, stable, balanced. A pillow that could support a head for hours without tipping, cracking, or, heaven forbid, feeling lopsided. Each porcelain pillow began with a mould or slab construction. For animal-shaped pillows, tigers, lions, fish, the forms were hand-sculpted, then hollowed out. For rectangular or crescent styles, the process was more geometric, but no less delicate. The clay used was high in kaolin, a fine white mineral that fired into a cool, strong porcelain. Once shaped, the pillows were dried, trimmed, and then decorated, often with underglaze cobalt blue, which turned a rich, permanent azure in the kiln. Some pillows bore landscapes, rivers, mountains, willows swaying beside distant pagodas. Others featured flowers, birds, mythical beasts. A few had calligraphy, verses from Tang poets, proverbs, dedications, and on rare occasions the artist would sign their name, humble and small, usually on the underside where only the user might find it. One such signature reads simply, "Made in leisure by Chen Hua, Year of the Rabbit." It's unclear whether Chen Hua was a master potter or a bored apprentice sneaking in poetry. Either way, their work remains, cool, curved, and cradling the heads of strangers across centuries. Historians still debate how many of these pillows were made by imperial commission versus for the general market. Some clearly bore court motifs, dragons, phoenixes, the double happiness symbol used in weddings. Others were simpler, likely produced for middle-class families, or even as gifts sold in regional markets. But porcelain wasn't the only game in town. Cloth pillows, perhaps less glamorous but no less meaningful, were made by women, usually within the household. Mothers, grandmothers, wives, and daughters stitched dreams into fabric piece by piece. The making of a pillow was both craft and expression. In wealthier homes, these pillows might be sewn by professional seamstresses or servants. But in many cases, especially for children or lovers, the work was personal. A young bride-to-be might embroider a pair of pillows as part of her dowry. A mother might reuse an old wedding dress to sew a pillow for her newborn, cutting around the faded phoenixes and keeping only the thread that still held shape. And what did these women sew with? Silk thread, often dyed at home. Indigo, saffron, madder root, and walnut husk were common natural dyes. The embroidery itself varied by region. In Suzhou, fine satin stitches created painterly scenes. Blossoms you could swear were real. In Sichuan, thicker threads created bold patterns. In Hunan, women favoured geometric shapes, protective charms, and motifs borrowed from folk stories. One preserved pillowcase from the late 1700s features an entire zodiac wheel, each animal stitched in miniature. Around the rim is a saying, "Sleep among stars, wake among kin." Some pillow artisans left hidden messages in their work, not signatures but initials tucked into vines, dates sewn in mirror script, a heart rendered in a different thread colour, just for the person who would lay their head there night after night. These were small rebellions, tiny declarations of love, and they mattered. There were also entire cottage industries built around pillow making. In some towns, especially near rivers or along trade routes, you might find pillow vendors selling ready-made designs. Some were practical, simple cotton rolls, herbal sachets. Others were decorative, meant for weddings, funerals, or festival displays. One vendor's stall might offer 10 types of tiger pillows, each with a different face, a different blend of herbs, a different embroidered blessing. And yes, there were custom orders. Families could commission pillows for special occasions, childbirth, examinations, retirement, or religious ceremonies. A scholar might request a pillow bearing a specific Confucian phrase. A widow might ask for one with no colour at all, save for a single white crane. One artisan's account from the early 1800s tells of a woman who ordered a crescent pillow stitched entirely in black, with the only image being a tiny boat, adrift, alone, on a sea of silk. No words, no explanation. The artisan added a note. The silence was her message. Of course, not every pillow was art. Some were made quickly, Some were bought cheaply. Not every household could afford silk, porcelain, or saffron-threaded verses, but even the humblest headrests were made with intention. In farming villages, pillows were sewn from hemp cloth stuffed with rice husks or millet straw. No designs, just knots and lines. But even there, a mother might tie a red string around the corner or tuck a clove into the seam, just in case a wandering spirit came too close. And in Buddhist monasteries, monks made their own pillows, plain, square, filled with dry tea leaves or paper scrolls no longer needed. These weren't about comfort, they were about simplicity, detachment. But still, the making mattered. A pillow had to be clean, balanced, appropriate. It was part of the path. You lie still now, one cheek resting against the hard, cool curve of a pillow, crafted centuries ago. Maybe by a potter in Qing Dynasty, maybe by a woman whose fingers were stained with dye, maybe by someone you'll never know, whose dreams, like yours, once drifted gently between silence and sleep. Because someone, somewhere, always made the pillows, and they made them not just for heads, but for hearts. The night is long now, but it's not lonely. You're far from alone in this moment of stillness. Around you, somewhere beyond the curtain of time, thousands of Qing sleepers rest their heads beside yours, each with a different pillow, a different dream, a different story. And tonight, you're about to visit the most festive, joyful, and peculiar chapter of them all, the role of pillows in Qing Dynasty celebrations and festivals. Because in a society where symbolism ruled the seasons and even dumplings carried hidden meanings, pillows too had their place in celebration. They were not merely part of the background. They often became active participants in rituals of joy, transition, and sometimes even mischief. Let's start with marriage, the grandest and most pillow-centric occasion of all. In Qing wedding traditions, pillows were far more than sleeping accessories. They were central symbols of union. The wedding bed, meticulously arranged by the bride's female relatives or a professional lucky woman, often a widow with many healthy sons, had to include a pair of matching pillows, placed side by side to represent harmony, longevity, and balance. These weren't any old pillows, they were red, always red. The colour of joy, prosperity, and protection. The fabric was silk, embroidered with phoenixes for the bride and dragons for the groom, an ancient pairing representing feminine and masculine energy. Sometimes, the pillows were connected by a thin red thread, literally tied together, to prevent separation during the first night. One cheeky variation included embroidered phrases that read like a duet. One pillow might say, "Enter gently," while the other read, "Rest completely." Subtle, saucy, very much approved by grandmothers and poets alike. But there were practical layers too. Hidden inside these pillows could be bundles of lucky coins, strands of red thread, or even herbal sachets meant to ensure fertility. Mugwort for purification, cinnamon bark for passion, crushed peach pit to ward off evil spirits who may have been jealous. And yes, historians still argue whether these pillow practices were truly ritual, or if they were just regional customs that gained popularity through poetry and storytelling. Some records are formal, others suggest it was all about giving the bride a moment of calm amid the chaos. Once the wedding night passed, the pillows remained as keepsakes. In some families they were passed on to the firstborn child. In others, they were carefully boxed and stored for blessings, only to be taken out again on the couple's 50th anniversary. Speaking of anniversaries, let's drift over to the birthday pillow. In Qing homes, birthdays weren't celebrated with cake and confetti, but with ritual objects and symbolic gestures. And the pillow? It was a popular and meaningful gift, especially for elders. Turning 60, you might receive a longevity pillow, crescent-shaped, embroidered with cranes, peaches, and pine trees. Some had verses that read, "Sleep as the mountains do, long, steady, and unmoved." Children often received zodiac-themed pillows on their birthdays, each shaped or embroidered according to their birth animal. A child born in the year of the monkey might receive a pillow with swinging vines and mischievous eyes. The idea was to celebrate the child's nature while also guiding it toward balance. Monkey too playful, stitch in a tortoise for patience. One recorded tradition involved adding a stitch for every year lived, so a 60-year-old pillow had 60 gold stitches in the lining. You couldn't see them from the outside, but they were counted like blessings. Quiet, personal, weighted with meaning. but not every celebration was so serious. Let's move now to the Lunar New Year, or Spring Festival. The Qing New Year celebration lasted for 15 days, and almost every item in the home underwent a festive transformation, including pillows. Fresh pillowcases were embroidered in red, gold and white, with motifs of firecrackers, lanterns, plum blossoms and dancing lions. Some featured the character Fu, meaning good fortune, sewn upside down to symbolise luck arriving. The word for upside down sounds like arrive. In wealthier households, family members gifted one another dream pillows for the year ahead. These small herbal sachet pillows were not for sleeping on but for hugging, holding or displaying near the bed. They might include dried orange peel for sweetness, cloves for warmth, and 5-colour threads for protection. Children sometimes received lucky animal pillows, miniature plushes shaped like lions, tigers or fish, meant to chase away bad dreams and naughty spirits during the high-energy festival days. One adorable tradition, the New Year nap contest. In some regions, children were told that whoever slept the longest during the first nap of the new year would have the most peaceful year, so you'd find entire households napping, on purpose, after lunch on the second day, curled up with their new festival pillows trying very hard not to wake up too soon. It's still unclear whether this was a clever adult strategy to get some peace and quiet or an actual mystical belief. Possibly both. Other festivals also had their pillow moments. During the Dragon Boat Festival, pillows might be stitched with boats, waves, and the legendary poet Qin, whose story is commemorated with racing and rice dumplings. Pillow herbs for this time often included wormwood and calamus, both associated with health and spirit cleansing. During Ghost Month, however, pillows were sometimes flipped upside down or temporarily removed from the bed entirely, especially in homes where superstitions ran deep. The belief was that a pillow could become a gateway during this month, and unless you were ready for visitors from beyond, it was best to let the mattress breathe alone. One particularly spooky folktale tells of a woman who embroidered a spirit barrier into her pillow's edge, 8 loops, tied in a continuous thread. She claimed that as long as the loops remained unbroken, no dream could turn into a haunting. But we'll let that one rest in the shadows. Finally, let's not forget retirement and legacy. When someone stepped down from public service, became a grandparent, or entered a new season of life, it was common to receive a transition pillow, embroidered with motifs like bridges, cranes in flight, or open books. These symbols pointed to reflection, wisdom, and new beginnings. Some even received custom poetry stitched onto their pillows, usually a couplet summarizing the person's life or values. One such couplet reads, "Spoke little, read deeply, slept gently, dreamed far," which is honestly an excellent life review. So as you lie here now, your own head cushioned by centuries of sleepy tradition, you can almost hear the laughter of children during festival naps, the hush of a bride laying her head beside her husband for the first time, the rustle of a birthday pillow being unwrapped like a silk-wrapped memory. These weren't just decorations, they were tokens, tethers, celebrations stitched in thread, porcelain and purpose. And somehow, across time and seasons and dynasties, they all whisper the same thing. Rest. You've made it through another year. You're deeper now, wrapped in layers of silence, drifting down the soft slope between history and sleep. Your pillow, this ancient storyteller beneath your ear, has shown you how Qing Dynasty people slept, dreamed, mourned, and celebrated. But there's one more path left to wander before the night is done. The spiritual and symbolic meanings of pillows in Qing life. Because in this world where dreams were omens, sleep was medicine, and embroidery spoke louder than words, your pillow wasn't just a headrest, it was a mirror of the soul. Let's begin with the foundational belief, that dreams mattered. In Qing Dynasty culture, especially among literate and religious circles, dreams weren't treated as random bursts of subconscious chaos. They were viewed as messages, from ancestors, from spirits, from the stars, and from the hidden parts of oneself. If the waking world was governed by etiquette and ritual, the sleeping world was a spiritual terrain just as complex, and your pillow served as the gateway. It was commonly believed that the quality, clarity, and direction of dreams could be influenced by what cradled your head. A good pillow aligned the sea, supported the neck, and kept the spirit anchored. A damaged or misaligned pillow that could cause restless sleep, vague or disturbing dreams, or even an invitation to unwanted visitors from this world or the next. That's why many families, especially in urban households, followed specific pillow placement customs. The pillow should not face directly toward a door. Doing so might let your sleeping spirit drift out too easily or attract spirits passing through thresholds. Positioning your pillow against a solid wall was preferred. It represented containment, protection, and stability. Some went further, placing charms beneath or beside the pillow, red paper slips bearing the character and rapice, sprigs of dried mugwort, or tiny cloth sachets filled with spirit-calming herbs. But the pillow wasn't just a passive object. It was also used actively in dream cultivation, a practice found among Taoists, Buddhists, and Confucian scholars alike. In Buddhist monasteries, particularly in southern China, dream discipline was taken seriously. Monks seeking insight or clarity might undergo dream incubation, a process in which the sleeper performed a small purification ritual, then laid their head upon a pillow prepared with specific materials. These might include sandalwood shavings for clarity, angelica for deep sleep, or lotus seed husks for purity of thought. One preserved monastic manual from the 1700s recommends the following procedure for dream clarity. Fast after noon. Bathe the feet in ginger-infused water. Place a sandalwood and lotus-stuffed pillow at the east side of the chamber. Recite a short verse. Let the gate of night open gently. Let the veil lift without fear. The dream that followed, if clear, was recorded and discussed with a senior monk. If unclear, the pillow might be adjusted or the ritual repeated. It was a deeply introspective discipline, often combined with meditation, and considered useful for both spiritual development and emotional insight. Confucian scholars approached dreams more cautiously, but still acknowledged their moral utility. One Qing-era philosopher kept a log of his dreams alongside notes on pillow materials, arguing that different fillings produced different moral tendencies: cypress for stillness, osmanthus for nostalgia, clove for melancholy, and ginger for vigour. He recommended that students studying the classics use pillows that were neither too soft nor too fragrant, lest comfort betray the diligence of the mind. And yes, some of this veered toward the poetic, but isn't that what sleep is for? Let's not forget the ritual symbolism behind the shape of pillows either. Rectangular pillows were associated with stability and order. These were favoured by officials and scholars, their firm lines reflecting the straightness of moral life. Crescent-shaped pillows evoked the moon and were often associated with femininity, cycles, and quiet transitions, popular among women and poets. Lotus-shaped pillows were deeply symbolic in Buddhist homes, representing the possibility of enlightenment through rest and meditation. Animal-shaped pillows, like tigers and turtles, were tied to protection, longevity, and resilience. Even their choice carried spiritual meaning. A particularly intricate example survives from a noblewoman's dowry: a lotus pillow with 12 petals, each inscribed with a mantra from the Heart Sutra. It wasn't meant for everyday sleep. It was intended for prayerful napping. Still, even the humblest homes practiced forms of symbolic sleep preparation. In rural households, older women might sew quiet tokens into a child's pillow: a snippet of ancestral cloth, a red thread looped 3 times for protection, a handwritten wish on rice paper tucked just beneath the seams. One elderly farmer's memoir recalls how his mother would whisper a line of poetry as she fluffed his pillow each night. He couldn't remember the full verse, only that it ended with, "May your spirit be lighter than silk." That memory stayed with him until his final years. Not the pillow itself, just the feeling. Pillows also played a part in death and afterlife rituals, but not only in burial. There was a belief that the pillow you used near the end of life helped guide the soul's transition. Some families would prepare a final pillow, white cloth, no embroidery, filled with a mild herbal blend of sandalwood and chrysanthemum. It symbolized simplicity, letting go. One daughter recorded sewing such a pillow for her father's final weeks. She added a phrase in small, nearly invisible stitches on the inner lining: "Your stories sleep here too." In homes that observed ancestral reverence, a deceased elder's pillow might be wrapped and placed on a family shrine for a set number of days or moon cycles. This wasn't worship. It was honouring the imprint left by that person's dreams, their thoughts, their essence. There were even pillow taboos passed down through generations. Never share your pillow with someone outside your family. It could blur spiritual boundaries. Never burn a pillow unless it belonged to the deceased, or risk releasing trapped dreams. Never gift a white pillow unless specifically requested. White was for endings, always endings. You lie still now, cocooned in thought. You may not believe in omens, or destiny, or red threads of fate sewn into linen, but in the hush of this moment, something about it feels true. That the pillow you use holds more than weight, that it remembers your nights, that it listens to your silence. Because in the Qing Dynasty, and maybe even now, the pillow was where your truest self could finally quietly speak. The world is weightless now. Even your breath feels suspended, like a leaf floating between one second and the next. You're still, deeply still, resting atop a story woven from silk threads, sandalwood dust, porcelain glaze, and quiet generations. And for this final chapter, we drift gently into the softest corner of all, what the pillow meant as a legacy in Qing Dynasty China. Because when the sun set on a life well lived in Qing society, what remained behind was never just wealth or property. Often, what survived were the most intimate objects, things that held time, touch, and memory. And for many families, especially those who honoured tradition quietly and thoroughly, one of the most beloved legacies passed down was a pillow. It might sound strange to modern ears. We don't typically imagine our pillows outliving us. But in Qing China, the pillow wasn't just a household item. It was a record keeper, a container of stories, a relic of dreams. Not all pillows were preserved, of course, but those that were carried meaning far beyond sleep. Many families passed down heirloom pillows through the generations. These were not always the fine porcelain ones from imperial kilns or the elaborately embroidered bridal headrests. Some were modest, cotton-stuffed rectangles sewn by a grandmother's hand, faded from years of use. Others were special only in memory, the scent of a parent's herbs lingering in the cloth, or the familiar weight of stitches felt under a resting cheek. One family in Jiangsu province kept a tradition of gifting a pillow embroidered with a single proverb at each wedding. Over 5 generations, the proverbs were sewn in the same style, passed from mother to daughter. Harmony rests beneath soft heads. Dreams shared sleep longer. No storm enters a closed eye. Quiet, poetic, deeply personal. Each pillow became a time capsule, not of events, but of beliefs, of family moods and quiet wishes. Some heirloom pillows were stored in cedar chests or wrapped in oilcloth and placed beside ancestral tablets. They were not used anymore, but they were touched. On birthdays, memorial days, and festivals like Qingming, descendants would gently unfold them, read the embroidery aloud, inhale the scent of age and memory, then fold them again, as if tucking the past back into sleep. And then there were the stories. Pillows didn't only pass from one generation to another in fabric, they lived on in words. A child might grow up hearing about the pillow their great-grandfather took to war. It was said to be stuffed with dried tea leaves and had a faded lotus stitched on the edge. He never slept a night without it, the family would say. Even when the snow came in through the tent, he kept that little pillow under his neck. Or maybe it was a pillow a mother made when her daughter left home to marry. Crescent-shaped soft blue silk embroidered with twin geese, symbols of loyalty. The daughter took it to her new house in another province. She used it every night until the thread began to unravel. Her own daughter, years later, would remake it in the same pattern. There were also pillows that carried unspoken truths. One early 19th century essay, attributed to a female scholar writing under a male pen name, described how women embroidered frustrations, longings, and dreams into pillow seams. "What we cannot voice, we stitch," she wrote. "The silence of the pillow listens better than the ears of men." Some historians believe these pillows were part of a hidden language, emotional records kept by women confined by social expectations but free, at least in their dreams. Of course, some legacies were built on simpler ground. Travel pillows, small, firm, often crescent-shaped, were gifted to sons setting out for exams or military service. Mothers filled them with herbs that reminded the traveller of home: ginger, cassia, dried orange peel. "So that even far from home," one mother told her son, "your sleep will still begin in my arms." These travel pillows were rarely heirlooms in the conventional sense. They were used until they frayed, wore out, or fell apart. But even then, the memory of them endured. One soldier's memoir from the late Qing period recounts carrying a pillow through 3 campaigns. It was patched and restuffed so many times it no longer resembled its original shape. When he returned home, he placed the ragged remains on his household shrine, not out of reverence for the object, but because it knew every fear I had. Legacy could be found in farewell pillows too. When a loved one was nearing the end of their life, some families would craft a final pillow, simple, white, unadorned. It was both a comfort and a guide. One woman recounted sewing such a pillow for her grandmother, using plain cotton and filling it with sandalwood and chrysanthemum. Inside the seam, she slipped a tiny note that read, "All your stories rest with me now." Some family members chose to cremate their loved one's pillow along with the body, believing it helped the soul carry its final dreams into the next life. Others kept the pillow, placing it in a quiet drawer or near the ancestral altar. In rare cases, they were placed in small shadow boxes with other keepsakes: a button, a lock of hair, a dried flower. Not every legacy pillow was treated with such reverence, of course. Some simply lingered in households, used by multiple generations, replaced only when necessary. Yet even these pillows, worn thin and familiar, held the marks of a shared life. Indentations where a grandfather rested his head each afternoon, faint herb stains, a barely visible patch sewn by a child's uneven hand. Sometimes, the most powerful legacies are the ones that go unnoticed. In certain monastic traditions, when a monk took their final vows and renounced all worldly possessions, their pillow was burned as part of a cleansing ritual. Symbolically, it represented the surrender of dreams shaped by ego. A new, undecorated pillow, often filled only with straw, would then be provided by the abbot. The monk would bow before it in silence, then lie down, ready to begin the long journey inward. Even in political households, the pillow found its quiet place. One Qing official, exiled after a failed reform effort, reportedly carried only two objects with him: a scroll of poetry and his childhood pillow. When asked why, he replied, "The scroll is who I tried to be. The pillow is who I truly am. So as you lie here now, your own pillow gently cooling beneath your cheek, think of the countless heads that once lay in similar silence. Generations of sleepers, dreamers, lovers, fighters, mothers who stitched messages into the seams, sons who carried pillows across battlefields, scholars who wrote essays in the dark, then curled up against ink-scented cotton to let their thoughts settle. The Qing pillow wasn't just a support for the head, it was a map of the soul. It absorbed not only sleep but sorrow, not only breath but memory, and in doing so it became more than fabric or glaze. It became a container of legacy, a quiet witness to all the little lives lived between the great chapters of history. So tonight, as your breath grows deeper, your limbs heavier, and your thoughts more distant, remember, the robe may fray, the house may fall, the scroll may fade, but somewhere, beneath a quiet seam, or in the hollow curve of fired porcelain, a dream remains, held, remembered, passed forward, and maybe, just maybe, your own pillow will remember you too.